Chapter 661 Emma 1. In a world far, far from the blue marble called Earth, ancient wonders defied mortal comprehension. This was a world where colossal world trees stretched toward twin moons, their massive trunks spanning entire mountainsides, bark shimmering with veins of crystallized mana that pulsed like arteries of pure magic. Canopies so vast they formed their own weather systems, where cities of the sylvan folk nestled within hollowed branches large enough to house entire human settlements. Floating islands drifted lazily through prismatic skies, tethered to the world trees by bridges of living wood that grew and shifted with the seasons. Waterfalls cascaded upward here, defying gravity as they carried life-giving essence from the realm's core to nourish the canopy above. The very air hummed with such concentrated mana that even the smallest wildflower could bloom in impossible colors. Violets that shifted through every hue of the spectrum, roses that glowed like captured starlight, grass that chimed like distant bells when the wind passed through. Rivers of liquid crystal wound between the great root systems, their waters so pure they were said to reflect not just physical forms but the very souls of those who gazed into their depths. These sacred streams had flowed unchanged for millennia, carrying the whispered prayers of countless generations to the heart of the world itself. At least that was supposed to be the case. Now the crystal rivers ran crimson with blood. The prismatic waters that once reflected starlight back to the heavens had become mirrors of death, their sacred surfaces broken by the bodies of the fallen. Where life-giving mana once sparkled in every droplet, now only the metallic stench of violence remained, coating everything in a film of corruption that made the very air taste of despair. Amidst the corpse-strewn battlefield, one figure remained standing. He was a man of the Sylvan race, 7 feet of ancient dignity and desperate rage. His bark-like skin bore the deep wood-grain patterns of 1,000 seasons, each line telling the story of his people's long heritage. Golden eyes, the mark of his earth affinity, blazed with power, but today they shone with something far more heartbreaking. The anguish of a protector who had failed everything he held sacred. Blood dripped from his blade, though none of it belonged to his enemy. Corvash Neth Valdris, Corvash Neth Aetion, Corvash Neth Salvith. His voice cracked as he screamed in the ancient tongue of his people, the words echoing off the towering world trees that had borne witness to this slaughter. Why are you doing this to us? Why are you hunting us? Why are you killing us? The target of his desperate pleas stood barely 20 feet away, yet she might as well have been in another dimension for all the concern she showed. Alisara Velcroix, the woman the surviving Sylvans had come to call Threneth Vashka, the Crimson Calamity, tilted her head with the idle curiosity of a child examining an interesting insect. Pink hair cascaded over her shoulders like spilled rose petals, a mockery of beauty against the backdrop of genocide. Crimson threads writhed around her form like living things, each one stained with the life essence of his fallen kin. She raised a delicate hand to her cheek, wiping away a splatter of blood with casual indifference. The gesture, so utterly mundane in the face of such horror, made the Sylvan warrior's face contort with fury that transcended language barriers. Behind him, far beneath the tangled roots of the great oak, the last stronghold of his people cowered in darkness. Children who would never see another sunrise. Elders whose 1,000-year memories would die with them. All that remained of a civilization that had flourished for 10 millennia, reduced to terrified whispers in the underground dark. And here stood their final guardian, Corvain Silverleaf, the only demigod among them, wielder of high radiant rank power that could reshape landscapes. The mightiest of his generation, now the last hope of an extinct race. It's just EXP farming, Alisara said with a shrug. Her tone so conversational it might have been discussing the weather. The Sylvan couldn't comprehend her words, but he understood her tone perfectly. The casual dismissal of his people's suffering, the complete absence of malice or hatred, just cold, calculating indifference. It was worse than cruelty. It was the attitude of someone stepping on ants. Something snapped inside him. Vashka! The ancient war cry erupted from his throat as he raised his blade Heartrender, forged from the heartwood of the first world tree, blessed by every grove elder for 1,000 generations. Every ounce of his divine power flowed into that final strike. The very sky split apart as space itself bent before the overwhelming force of a demigod's desperation. The air shrieked and reality warped, creating fractures in the dimensional fabric that would take decades to heal. This was the technique that had once split mountains, that had held back the tide of 3 different apocalyptic wars. The accumulated might of an entire species channeled through their last defender. This is at the level of Magnus Drakkar, I suppose, Alisara observed with clinical detachment, watching the reality-rending attack approach. She extended one pale hand almost lazily, as if reaching for a glass of wine, and caught the slash. The dimensional rift that should have carved through anything in existence simply stopped, held motionless by 5 delicate fingers that showed no strain whatsoever. For a moment, the Sylvan's golden eyes widened in disbelief. Then she closed her fist. The attack didn't just dissipate. It shattered like glass, fragments of broken space spiraling away into nothingness. The backlash hit Corvain like a physical blow, driving him to his knees as his own power turned against him. "How weak!" Alisara exhaled, the disappointment in her voice genuine. Before he could even process what had happened, crimson threads erupted from the ground beneath him. They pierced through his ancient bark armor as if it were paper, through flesh and bone and the very core of his being. His divine essence scattered like morning mist, and the last hope of the Sylvan race crumbled to ash. Alisara barely spared his remains a glance before turning toward the hidden stronghold. Her threads spread through the earth like blood through water, seeking out every last trace of life. The screaming began moments later, brief, terrified, then silent. When it was over, when the final echo had faded and the crystal rivers ran darker than ever before, Alisara stood alone among the ruins of an entire civilization. She brushed dust from her clothing with the same casual gesture she'd used to wipe away blood. Only then did she turn away from the devastation, her gaze lifting toward the star-scattered void between worlds. Her lips curved in a smile that held warmth for the first time since the slaughter began. Genuine affection that somehow made her previous indifference even more chilling. "I wonder if Arthur would like my present." Chapter 662. Emma, 2. The Vatican sanctum of the Red Chalice cult was everything I'd expected from a vampire organization trying to project divine authority, and nothing like I'd prepared myself for emotionally. Gothic spires stretched impossibly high, their black stone surfaces carved with intricate patterns that seemed to shift when viewed peripherally. Stained glass windows depicted scenes of mortals kneeling before winged figures, but the light filtering through cast everything in shades of crimson rather than the traditional blues and golds of normal churches. The air itself felt thick with concentrated mana, so dense it was almost oppressive. Reika's hand squeezed mine as we followed our escort, a silent figure in elaborate robes whose face remained hidden beneath a hood. The corridors we walked through were wide enough for a dozen people to walk abreast, lined with portraits of previous popes and cardinals. Each painting seemed to track our movement with eyes that held too much intelligence for mere artwork. "The architecture is impressive," Reika murmured, her voice barely audible. She was maintaining perfect composure, but I could feel the tension in her grip. Though the aesthetic choices are distinctive. Distinctive was one way to put it. The entire place screamed of supernatural power barely contained by mortal constructs. Every surface was inscribed with symbols that made my eyes water if I looked too long, and the very walls seemed to pulse with a rhythm that didn't quite match my heartbeat. We passed through 3 separate security checkpoints, each one more elaborate than the last. Magical scanners that felt like icy fingers probing through my soul, guard chambers where hooded figures tracked our every step, and finally a massive set of double doors that required our escort to present multiple keys and speak passwords in languages that predated civilization. "Her Holiness will see you now," the escort finally announced, his voice carrying an odd echo that suggested his throat had been modified in some supernatural way. "However," he paused, turning to address me directly, "she has requested a private audience with you first, Mr. Matthias. Your companion will be escorted to the waiting chambers." My blood turned to ice. "Of course she wants to see me alone. That's perfectly acceptable," I managed, keeping my voice steady despite the way my heart rate had just doubled. "Reika, I'll..." I understand, she said softly, though I caught the flash of concern in her eyes. She leaned up to press a quick kiss to my cheek, the gesture both affectionate and reassuring. Don't keep Her Holiness waiting. Our escort gestured for Reka to follow him down a side corridor, leaving me standing alone before the most imposing set of doors I'd ever seen. They were easily 20 feet tall, crafted from what appeared to be a single piece of black wood that reflected no light whatsoever. Silver inlays formed patterns that hurt to look at directly, and handles shaped like grasping hands seemed to flex as I approached. 1 year. It had been exactly 1 year since I'd last seen Alisara. 1 year since I'd watched her transform from the woman I'd loved in my previous life into something that defied easy categorization. Someone who had developed an obsession with me that bordered on pathological. And now I was walking willingly into her domain. I placed my hand on the door handle, feeling the cold metal respond to my touch. The massive doors swung open without a sound, revealing a chamber that took my breath away. The Pope's private audience room was a study in contradictions. Vaulted ceilings disappeared into darkness above, while the floor was covered in thick carpets that muffled every footstep. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with tomes that radiated their own soft light, and a massive fireplace cast dancing shadows that seemed to move independently of the flames. But none of that registered after the first moment, because sitting behind an ornate desk at the far end of the room was Emma. Not Alisara. Not the pink-haired vampire pope I'd been expecting. Emma. Exactly as she'd appeared in my previous life, down to the smallest detail. Auburn hair that caught the firelight and threw back highlights of gold and copper. Amber eyes that had always reminded me of warm honey, now fixed on me with an expression of delighted surprise. The same heart-shaped face, the same elegant neck, the same smile that had once made me believe in happily ever after. Arthur. Luna's voice echoed in my mind, sharp with warning. That's not real. Whatever you're seeing, it's an illusion or construct. Be careful. But even knowing it was fake, seeing Emma's face again hit me like a physical blow. Hello, Arthur, she said, and even her voice was perfect. The same slight huskiness that had always made my name sound like music when she spoke it. It's been far too long. I forced myself to step fully into the room, letting the doors close behind me with a soft click that sounded oddly final. You're not her, I said, my voice coming out rougher than I'd intended. You're not Emma. Her smile widened, becoming something mischievous and knowing. Of course I'm not. Did you really think Alisara would make this easy for you? She rose from her chair with fluid grace, every movement exactly as I remembered. Consider this present number 1 from your devoted admirer. Though I have to say, this form isn't nearly as attractive as Alisara's actual body. She wanted me to be sure to mention that. The casual way she spoke about being a construct sent chills down my spine. What are you, exactly? A temporary vessel. A message. A test. She walked around the desk, moving closer with that same confident stride Emma had always possessed. I'm what happens when someone with Alisara's power and obsession decides to give you exactly what you think you want, while making sure you understand it's only a pale shadow of what she can offer. This is twisted by all standards, I thought. The psychological warfare implicit in this move was staggering. Create a perfect replica of my lost love, just to drive home how much power Alisara wielded. How completely she understood my weaknesses. Why? I asked. Why go to these lengths? The Emma construct tilted her head, studying me with those achingly familiar eyes. Because she loves you, Arthur. Because she spent every day of the past year thinking about you, planning for you, reshaping herself to be worthy of you. Her expression softened, becoming almost sympathetic. And because she knows you're here to infiltrate her organization and steal the clone. The admission hit me like cold water. She knows. Of course she knows. If she knows, then why? Because she doesn't care? The construct interrupted, laughing with Emma's voice in a way that made my chest ache. Did you really think you could fool someone who's been obsessing over you for a year? Someone who's had access to every piece of intelligence the Red Chalice cult has gathered about your activities. She was standing close enough now that I could smell the perfume Emma had always worn. Jasmine and vanilla, a scent I'd thought I'd never encounter again. It was such a perfect reproduction that part of me wanted to reach out and touch her, just to confirm she wasn't real. Then why let me in at all? Because, my dear Arthur, she said, reaching up to trace a finger along my cheek in a gesture that was pure Emma. She knows exactly what you want to do, and she's going to help you do it. Chapter 663, Emma 3. The Emma constructs words hung in the air like a challenge, and I found myself staring into those amber eyes, searching for some hint of deception. But her expression remained completely sincere, as if offering to help me destroy her creator's organization was the most natural thing in the world. Help me? I repeated slowly. You're saying Alisara wants to help me infiltrate her own cult? Oh, absolutely. She moved back to the desk, settling into the high-back chair with practiced ease. You see, Arthur, she's learned so much in the past year. About power, about strategy, about what it means to truly love someone. Her smile turned predatory. And she's realized that the best way to keep you close is to give you exactly what you think you want. This is insane. The psychological complexity of what Alisara was proposing made my head spin. Let me infiltrate her organization, presumably steal secrets and gather intelligence, all while knowing I was doing it. What was the endgame? I can see those gears turning, the construct said, laughing softly. You're trying to figure out the trap, aren't you? Trying to understand what she gains from this arrangement. Enemies? The word seemed to genuinely surprise her. Oh, Arthur, you still don't understand, do you? She leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand in a gesture that was achingly familiar. She doesn't see you as an enemy. She sees you as her other half, her equal, the only person in existence capable of matching her. Arthur, be very careful here. Luna's warning echoed in my mind. Whatever game she's playing, it's beyond anything I can predict. And if I refuse this generous offer, then you leave, right now. Walk out of here, abandon your mission. The construct's expression grew serious. Because make no mistake, this is your only opportunity. Either you play her game or you don't play at all. I closed my eyes, weighing my options. The smart move was to leave. Everything about this situation screamed trap, manipulation, psychological warfare designed to break me down. But I need to get close to the clone. And if this is the only way, what exactly are you proposing? Her smile returned, bright and knowing. A contract, of course. The same vampiric covenant that any new cult member would receive. Except in this case, you'll be contracting with me, and through me with Alisara herself. Alisara is a vampire? Half vampire, half human, she corrected. She rose from the chair again, moving to a cabinet that I hadn't noticed before. From inside, she withdrew an ornate ceremonial dagger, its blade gleaming with silver inlay that seemed to pulse with its own light. The process is simple, she explained, returning to stand before me. A blood exchange, a brief ritual, and then you'll officially be under vampiric protection. You'll gain access to cult facilities, intelligence networks, and inner circle meetings. Everything you need to accomplish your goals. And everything Alisara needs to monitor my every move. There's just one small detail, I said, trying to keep my voice casual. I have my own techniques for dealing with vampiric influence. I wouldn't want any misunderstandings about the nature of our arrangement. Lucent harmony, she said immediately, and my blood froze. Yes, Arthur, she knows about that too. The power of harmony and tranquility, capable of isolating foreign spiritual influences while maintaining the appearance of submission. Quite clever, really. How the hell does she know about lucent harmony? Surprised. The construct's eyes sparkled with amusement. You really should give her more credit. She's someone far more powerful than your master could dream of touching even in death. She held out the dagger handle first. So by all means use your lucent harmony. Create whatever barriers you think you need. The contract will still be legitimate enough to fool anyone who examines it, and you'll still gain access to everything you're after. I took the blade, feeling its weight in my hand. The metal was warm to the touch, and I could sense the magical properties woven into its structure. This wasn't just ceremonial. It was a genuine artifact designed for supernatural contracts. Why are you making this so easy? Because she loves you, the construct repeated, as if that explained everything. And because she's confident that once you see what she's really accomplished, once you understand the scope of her vision, you'll choose to stay willingly. The confidence in her voice was unsettling. Not arrogance, genuine certainty, as if the outcome had already been decided and we were just going through the motions. I drew the blade across my palm, feeling the sharp bite of silver against skin. Blood welled up immediately, darker than it should have been, and I could feel the magical energies in the room responding to the offering. The Emma construct did the same, her blood a lighter shade that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. When she pressed her palm against mine, the contact sent a jolt of power through both of us. Now, I reached deep within myself, calling upon lucent harmony. The technique activated like a shield around my soul, creating barriers of perfect tranquility that would isolate any foreign influence. The vampiric miasma that tried to flow through our joined hands met those barriers and simply slid away, unable to find purchase. But I let just enough through to maintain the illusion. A thin thread of connection that would register to any examination while keeping my consciousness completely intact. The construct's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment, her perfect Emma facade cracked. "Remarkable," she breathed. "It's just like you to find a way to have your cake and eat it too." The ritual concluded with a flash of crimson light, and I felt the contract settle into place. To anyone observing, I would now register as legitimately bound to the Red Chalice cult. But thanks to lucent harmony, my will remained entirely my own. "Congratulations," she said, releasing my hand and stepping back. "You're now officially under vampiric protection. Welcome to the Red Chalice cult, Cardinal Arthur." Cardinal. That seems like a rather high starting rank. Alisara doesn't believe in wasting time with formalities. You'll have access to classified intelligence, restricted facilities, and direct communication with the inner circle. Her smile turned mysterious. "Everything you need to accomplish your mission." She moved back to the desk, settling into the chair one final time. As she did, I noticed that her form was beginning to look less solid, as if the construct was reaching the end of its duration. "Before you go," she said, her voice taking on a distant quality, "Alisara wanted me to give you a message. She says she'll see you in 4 years. She's going to finish her work beyond Earth, and then she'll be able to give you her full attention." Work beyond Earth. The phrase sent a chill down my spine as I remembered the reports of entire civilizations being systematically eliminated. What kind of work? But the construct was already fading, her features becoming translucent. "Goodbye, Arthur. Enjoy your new position. And remember, she's always watching." The Emma construct dissolved into motes of light that scattered like fallen stars, leaving me alone in the chamber with nothing but the lingering scent of jasmine and vanilla, and the terrifying knowledge that Alisara knew exactly what I was planning, and was helping me do it anyway. Chapter 664. Heavenly Demon 1. Alisara's surprising interference had done more than just throw me off balance. It had fundamentally transformed my entire infiltration strategy in ways I was still processing. My original plan had been methodical, cautious, designed around the assumption that I'd be starting from the bottom of their hierarchy. I'd intended to spend weeks carefully avoiding the attention of cardinals and other high-ranking officials, using lucent harmony not just on myself but on Reika as well to ensure neither of us fell prey to vampiric corruption. The plan had been to slowly work our way up through the ranks, gathering intelligence piece by piece while maintaining the most minimal possible profile. Instead, I now found myself wearing the crimson robes of a cardinal, second in authority only to the deputy pope himself, with power equivalent to the dozen or so other cardinals who formed the cult's inner circle. The irony wasn't lost on me. In trying to infiltrate their organization, I'd been handed more influence than some members achieved after decades of service. And all because she wanted to make things interesting. The administrative chambers where I'd been brought after the contract ceremony buzzed with activity. Clerks in lesser robes hurried back and forth with documents, while lower-ranking officials bowed deferentially whenever they caught sight of my new insignia. The speed with which news of my promotion had spread through the Vatican sanctum was remarkable and slightly unnerving. Cardinal Matthias, a nervous-looking administrator, approached, clutching a stack of papers against his chest. "Your companion, Miss Cordelia. We've prepared the documentation for her honorary bishop rank, as you requested." Honorary bishop. It was a perfect solution, really. High enough rank to grant her significant access and protection, but not requiring the full vampiric contract that would have complicated everything. Reika would have authority over entire regional branches while remaining technically unbound to any vampire patron. A status that raised some eyebrows but wasn't unprecedented for trusted associates of cardinals. "Excellent," I replied, maintaining the authoritative tone expected of my new position. "Has she been briefed on her new responsibilities?" "Yes, Your Eminence. She's currently reviewing the operational structure of our various branches." The administrator's hands trembled slightly as he spoke. "Will there be anything else you require?" "Actually, yes." I fixed him with a steady gaze, letting just enough command presence leak into my voice to ensure compliance. "I want detailed intelligence reports on all active branches, particularly those handling specialized projects. And I want them within the hour." As he scurried away, I reflected on how dramatically Alisara had altered the playing field. What should have been a dangerous, months-long infiltration had become a matter of simply exercising legitimate authority. The woman was either playing a game so complex I couldn't comprehend it, or she was genuinely confident that seeing her operation up close would somehow convert me to her cause. Neither possibility is particularly comforting. Reika appeared in the doorway a few minutes later, now wearing the deep purple robes of her new rank. The color suited her, and I could see in her posture that she was adapting quickly to the role. Her expression was carefully neutral, but I caught the slight questioning tilt of her eyebrow that asked, "What the hell is happening here?" "Dear," I said formally, aware that others might be listening, "I trust your orientation has been satisfactory?" "Quite informative," she replied smoothly, "though I confess the scope of the organization's operations is impressive. That's one way to put it." From the brief glimpses I'd caught of the intelligence reports, the Red Chalice cult's reach extended across multiple continents and dimensions. They had branches in major cities, hidden enclaves in remote locations, and what appeared to be several off-world operations that defied easy categorization. The administrator returned with remarkable speed, presenting me with a leather portfolio thick with documents. "The intelligence summaries you requested, Your Eminence, organized by region and operational priority." I opened the portfolio, scanning the contents quickly. Branch locations, personnel rosters, ongoing projects, and there, marked with the highest classification levels, references to something called the Slatemark Initiative. "Perfect. The Slatemark Empire branch," I said, looking up at the administrator. "I want full details on their current operations." The man's face went pale. "Your Eminence, that facility is under Cardinal Akasha's direct jurisdiction. Any requests for information would need to go through." "I'm not making a request," I interrupted, letting ice creep into my voice. "I'm giving an order. As a cardinal of equal standing, I have the authority to review any operational data relevant to cult interests." Cardinal Akasha. The name alone was almost insulting in its presumption. Akasha, the same name as the closest thing to a true deity, the librarian of the Akashic records. For someone to take that name as their own title spoke to either breathtaking arrogance or dangerous delusion. Probably both, I decided. The kind of ego that chooses to name itself after God doesn't tend toward humility. "Of course, Your Eminence," the administrator stammered. "I'll have the files prepared immediately, though I should mention Cardinal Akasha has been territorial about the Slatemark operations. He may not appreciate external oversight." "Then perhaps it's time Cardinal Akasha learned that territorial behavior doesn't supersede cult hierarchy," I replied coldly. Bishop Reka and I will be conducting a personal inspection of the Slatemark branch. Make the arrangements. The poor man looked like he wanted to object further, but the weight of my newly acquired authority was apparently sufficient to overcome his reservations. Yes, Your Eminence. I'll contact the branch immediately. Within 2 hours, we were aboard a luxurious transport that made private jets look modest by comparison. The Red Chalice cult spared no expense when it came to moving their leadership around, and I found myself in a flying palace complete with conference rooms, sleeping quarters, and what appeared to be a small library stocked with texts on supernatural theology. "This is surreal," Reka murmured once we were airborne and safely behind privacy wards. "Are we really just walking into their most sensitive facility?" Apparently, I settled into one of the plush chairs, still trying to process the rapid turn of events. Though I suspect this ease of access comes with a price we haven't discovered yet. The flight to the Slatemark Empire took several hours, giving me time to review the intelligence files in detail. What I found was both fascinating and deeply disturbing. The Slatemark branch wasn't just a regional headquarters. It was a research facility focused on what the documents euphemistically called essence cultivation and modification. As we approached our destination, I received a priority communication from the branch facility. The message was brief and carried undertones of barely concealed relief. Cardinal Akasha has been called away on urgent business. Branch operations proceeding under deputy authority. Arrival preparations complete. How convenient. Either Akasha had genuinely been summoned elsewhere, or someone wanted her out of the way for our visit. Given everything else that had happened today, I suspected the latter. The Slatemark branch was housed in what appeared to be a converted cathedral, though the architecture had been extensively modified with additions that definitely weren't part of the original design. Spires twisted in directions that hurt to look at, and the stained glass windows depicted scenes that no traditional religion would have endorsed. Deputy Branch Commander Sereth met us at the entrance, a gaunt man whose pale complexion and elongated canine teeth marked him as a turned vampire rather than a pureblood. His nervousness was palpable as he bowed deeply. "Cardinal Matthias, Bishop Cordelia, welcome to the Slatemark Research Facility. I must apologize for Cardinal Akasha's absence. She was recalled to handle a situation in the outer territories." "No need for apologies," I replied smoothly. "In fact, her absence may allow for a more thorough inspection without territorial complications." The relief on Sereth's face was obvious. "Of course, Your Eminence. We are at your complete disposal. Is there any particular aspect of our operations you'd like to review first?" "The Essence Cultivation Project. I want to see the primary subject. The Heavenly Demon Clone." Sereth's voice dropped to a whisper. "Your Eminence, that project is classified at the highest levels. Even Cardinal Akasha requires special authorization to." "Deputy Commander," I said quietly, letting just enough menace creep into my tone to convey the consequences of continued objection. "Are you suggesting that a cardinal of the Red Chalice lacks sufficient clearance to review cult operations?"
No.
"No, of course not, Your Eminence. Please, follow me." The deeper we went into the facility, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The walls were lined with containment chambers, most of them empty but a few holding specimens that I tried not to examine too closely. The air itself felt thick with supernatural energy, as if reality was being constantly bent and reshaped by whatever experiments were taking place here. Finally, we reached a heavily secured corridor that required multiple biometric scans and magical verification to access. At the end of this corridor was a single door, marked only with symbols that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them. "The primary cultivation chamber," Sereth announced, his voice barely steady. "Your Eminence, I should warn you, the subject is not what most people expect." He opened the door and I stepped through into a room that was part laboratory, part nursery, part prison cell. Monitoring equipment lined the walls, recording every conceivable form of data, while comfortable furnishings tried to disguise the clinical nature of the space. And in the center of it all, sitting cross-legged on a small bed while reading what appeared to be a children's book, was a little girl who couldn't have been more than 8 years old. She looked up when we entered, and I felt my world tilt on its axis. This was supposed to be the heavenly demon clone, the ultimate weapon that the Red Chalice cult was developing, the existential threat that had to be stopped at all costs. She had dark hair tied back in simple pigtails, large eyes that held far too much intelligence for her apparent age, and was wearing a dress that looked like it had been picked out by someone trying very hard to make a laboratory subject look like a normal child. "Oh," she said, her voice carrying the sweet clarity of childhood. "More visitors. Are you here to run tests too?" I stared at her, my carefully prepared strategies and contingencies crumbling to dust in my mind. She's just a child. Chapter 665. Heavenly Demon 2. Judgment. The memory surfaced unbidden from the pages of the saga of the Divine Swordsman, Lucifer's blade gleaming with white astral energy, his sword the very embodiment of divine justice. I could almost see it. His verdant eyes locked with his enemy, the unstoppable force of his judgment meeting an equally unstoppable fist. The woman with pitch-black hair and dark eyes who had destroyed an entire city, radiating power enough to send shivers down even Lucifer's spine despite being at the same mana rank. Perfect match for him. That was how the web novel had described their battle. Lucifer at 22, meaning this confrontation was still 3 years in the future. Since the clone would be an adult by then, I'd calculated she should be at least 16 by now, old enough for complex reasoning, old enough to understand the gravity of her situation, old enough to make her own choices about escape and freedom. So why the hell was she 8 years old? "What is this?" I demanded, forcing my voice into the cold, calculating tone expected of a cardinal while my mind reeled from the implications. Why is the subject so underdeveloped? I chose my words carefully, making them sound like I was questioning her utility rather than expressing horror at her situation. Every instinct screamed at me to drop the act, to gather this child up and get her as far away from this place as possible. But revealing my true feelings would doom not just my mission, but potentially Reika and the girl herself. Beside me, I felt Reika's hand tremble in mine. I squeezed gently, a subtle reminder that we needed to maintain our roles no matter how disturbing this became. "Her development follows a unique timeline, Your Eminence," Sareth explained, his clinical tone making my skin crawl. "The demonic essence integrated into her cellular structure accelerates certain aspects of her growth while slowing others. Physically, she ages at roughly half the normal rate, but her power development is exponential. She will become an adult in 2 years from now." 2 years. The timeline would fit perfectly with the saga's accounts. This child would become the monster capable of matching Lucifer blow for blow, of laying waste to entire cities without breaking stride. "And her current capabilities?" I asked, though part of me dreaded the answer. "Equivalent to a bishop-rank combatant," Sareth said with unmistakable pride. "Perhaps you'd like a demonstration?" No. Every fiber of my being rejected the idea of watching a child, any child, be forced to display powers that should never exist in someone so young. But refusing would raise suspicions, and maintaining my cover was essential to any hope of eventually helping her. "Proceed," I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. Sareth moved to a control panel embedded in the wall, his fingers dancing across symbols that pulsed with malevolent energy. "Subject 0, we have visitors who would like to observe your capabilities. Please prepare for demonstration." The little girl, Subject 0, they don't even use her name, looked up from her book with an expression of resigned acceptance that broke my heart. She shouldn't know that look. No 8-year-old should carry that weight of expectation and inevitable compliance. "Okay," she said simply, setting her book aside with careful precision. "What would you like me to show them?" "Standard combat assessment. Level 3 intensity." She nodded and moved to the center of the room, where hidden mechanisms revealed themselves as the floor opened to produce what appeared to be a training dummy crafted from some kind of supernatural metal. The construct was easily twice her size, designed to withstand attacks that could level buildings. What happened next defied every natural law I understood. The child raised her small hand, and darkness gathered around her fingers. Not the absence of light, but something deeper and more fundamental. Deep dark and miasma. When she gestured toward the training dummy, that darkness lashed out like a living thing. The metal construct didn't just break. It dissolved, its molecular structure unraveling at the touch of whatever force she commanded. In seconds, tons of reinforced supernatural alloy had been reduced to scattered particles that glittered like black snow in the laboratory's harsh lighting. "Excellent as always," Sareth commented, as if watching a child unmake matter itself was the most natural thing in the world. "Her control has improved significantly since the last assessment." I felt Reika's grip on my hand tighten to the point of pain. When I glanced at her, I saw that her face had gone completely pale, and her breathing had become shallow and rapid. Her eyes were fixed on the little girl with an expression of barely contained terror that had nothing to do with the display of power we just witnessed. "She's remembering her own experiences." Reika had been subjected to supernatural experimentation when she was young. Not to this extent, but enough to leave scars that never fully healed. Watching another child trapped in the same kind of clinical hell was triggering memories she'd spent years trying to suppress. "Fascinating," I managed, keeping my voice level despite the rage building in my chest. "I think we've seen enough for now. Bishop Cordelia and I will need to review this information in detail before proceeding." "Of course, Your Eminence. I'll have our staff prepare detailed reports on all aspects of the project." "Will you be staying overnight?" "Yes. Have quarters prepared for us." The walk to our assigned rooms felt like an eternity. Reika moved like someone in a trance, her usual grace replaced by the mechanical movements of someone barely holding themselves together. The moment the door closed behind us and I activated the privacy wards, she collapsed into the nearest chair. "I can't," she whispered, wrapping her arms around herself. "Arthur, I can't watch this. She's so small, and they're doing to her what they—" Her voice broke, and I could see her struggling against memories that threatened to overwhelm her completely. I moved to kneel beside her chair, taking her hands in mine. "Hey, look at me. You're safe. We're going to figure this out." "But she's not safe," Reika said, tears starting to flow. "She's trapped in there, and they're turning her into a weapon. And she probably doesn't even understand what's happening to her." She met my eyes, and I saw my own anguish reflected back at me. "What are we going to do, Arthur? How do we save a child from this without destroying everything we've worked for?" That was the question, wasn't it? My original plan had assumed I'd be dealing with a willing participant, someone old enough to understand the stakes and make informed decisions about their own fate. But this child, Subject Zero, was innocent in every way that mattered. She was a victim, not a villain, regardless of what kind of power she possessed. This was going to be much more difficult than I thought. Chapter 666. Heavenly Demon 3. The administrative wing of the Slatemark facility buzzed with nervous energy as I reviewed the files Deputy Commander Sareth had provided. Each document was more disturbing than the last, clinical reports detailing the creation and development of what they called Project Genesis, the Red Chalice cult's attempt to cultivate their own supreme-tier combatant. The other major cults each possess young talents of extraordinary potential. I read aloud from one particular report, keeping my voice carefully neutral for Reika's benefit. Cordelia sat across from me in our temporary office, her purple bishop robes arranged carefully as she maintained the illusion of reviewing regional intelligence reports. To anyone observing, we appeared to be conducting routine administrative work. In reality, we were piecing together the full scope of what this facility represented. Project Genesis was initiated to address this deficiency. She read from another file, her voice tight with controlled anger. Through careful genetic manipulation and essence integration, we have successfully created a being capable of matching any young talent produced by rival organizations. They're ace in the hole. It made sense from a strategic perspective. The magical world operated on a delicate balance of power, and having supreme-level combatants was essential for maintaining influence. But understanding the reasoning didn't make the reality any less horrific. "Matthias," Reika said quietly, using my cover name even in private. "Look at this medical report." I leaned over to examine the document she'd highlighted. The clinical language couldn't disguise the horrific details. Surgical procedures performed on a developing child, essence integration processes that had a 60% fatality rate, psychological conditioning designed to ensure absolute obedience. 47 previous attempts, I murmured, noting the casualty statistics. Subject 0 is the first to survive the complete enhancement process. 47 children. The number hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about one victim, it was about an entire program of systematic murder disguised as research. How many families had lost children to feed this project? How many innocents had died so the Red Chalice cult could have their weapon? A soft knock at the door interrupted my growing rage. "Enter," I called, arranging my features into the appropriate expression of cardinal authority. Sareth stepped inside, his vampire features arranged in a mask of deference. "Your Eminence, I wanted to inform you that Subject Zero's afternoon conditioning session has been completed. If you'd like to conduct another inspection." "Perfect. Actually, I believe regular observation will be necessary to properly evaluate the project's viability. I'll be conducting daily assessments for the remainder of our stay. Of course, Your Eminence. Shall I have the security escort prepared?" "That won't be necessary. I prefer to conduct my evaluations without external interference." Saretha's pale features flickered with uncertainty. "Your Eminence, protocol requires." "Protocol," I interrupted coldly, "requires that you follow the directives of a cardinal without question. Are you suggesting that my authority is insufficient to ensure my own safety?"
No.
"No, of course not, Your Eminence. I simply—" He swallowed nervously. "The subject can be unpredictable when not properly supervised." Unpredictable, as if any 8-year-old wouldn't be traumatized by the treatment this child had endured. "I believe I can handle one small girl, Deputy Commander. Have the containment chamber prepared for my arrival in 1 hour." After Sareth left, Reka fixed me with a questioning look. "What are you planning?" "Information gathering," I replied honestly. "We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with before we can formulate any kind of rescue plan. And that means talking to her directly." An hour later, I stood outside the containment chamber again. But this time the circumstances felt entirely different. Without the clinical demonstration and Saretha's nervous explanations, the space felt more like what it actually was, a prison cell disguised as a bedroom. The little girl, Subject 0, sat in the same cross-legged position as before, but now she was working on what appeared to be a jigsaw puzzle. The pieces were scattered across a small table, and she was methodically fitting them together with the kind of focused concentration that reminded me painfully of how children should be spending their time. She looked up when I entered, and I saw wariness flash across her features before she quickly schooled her expression into neutral compliance. She's learned to hide her emotions, at 8 years old. "Hello," I said gently, making no sudden movements as I approached. "May I sit down?" Her dark eyes studied me carefully. "You're the cardinal from yesterday, the one who watched me break the training dummy." "I am. My name is Matthias." I settled into a chair across from her small table, noting how she tensed slightly at my proximity. "What are you working on?" "A puzzle," she said simply, her voice carrying the careful modulation of someone who had learned that wrong answers carried consequences. "It's supposed to help with pattern recognition and strategic thinking. Even her recreational activities are designed around making her a better weapon." "What's the picture?" For the first time, a hint of genuine emotion crept into her expression. "A garden, with flowers and trees and butterflies." She picked up a piece that showed part of a bright yellow bloom. "I've never seen a real garden." The simple statement hit me harder than any of the clinical reports had. This child had been created in a laboratory, raised in sterile chambers, and trained to be a living weapon. She had never experienced the most basic joys of childhood: sunlight on her face, grass beneath her feet, the simple pleasure of watching butterflies dance among flowers. "Would you like to?" I asked quietly. "See a real garden, I mean." Her hand froze in the act of placing the puzzle piece. For a moment, her carefully maintained composure cracked, revealing the desperate longing of a child who had never been allowed to dream of anything beyond these walls. I'm not supposed to want things, she whispered. So quietly I almost didn't hear her. Wanting things makes the tests harder. The tests. I'd seen references to psychological evaluations in the files, but hearing her speak about them in that defeated tone made my chest tight with fury. They weren't just torturing her body. They were systematically breaking her spirit. Everyone wants things, I said carefully. It's part of being human. I'm not human, she replied with matter-of-fact certainty. I'm a weapon. Weapons don't want things. Who told her that? The clinical detachment in her voice when referring to herself as a weapon was perhaps the most disturbing thing I'd encountered yet. Someone had deliberately taught this child to dehumanize herself, to think of her own desires and emotions as flaws to be corrected. What if I told you that you're wrong? I asked. What if you're both? She looked at me with confusion. Both what? Both human and something more. Being powerful doesn't make you less human. It just means you have more choices about how to use that humanity. For several minutes, we sat in silence while she continued working on her puzzle. I could see her processing my words, trying to reconcile them with everything she'd been taught about herself. Finally, she spoke again. The doctor says I'll be ready for real missions soon, that I'll get to leave this room and prove my worth to the cult. She placed another piece, completing a section that showed a butterfly's wing. But I don't want to hurt people. The doctor, probably Cardinal Akasha, though the child wouldn't know her real name. What do you want to do instead? I want to finish my puzzle, she said simply, and maybe see if the real butterflies are as pretty as the ones in the picture. I made a decision that would change everything. What if I told you that might be possible? Her hands stilled completely. You're lying. I never lie to children. Everyone lies to children. They say it's for our own good. Smart girl. She'd already learned one of the harsh truths about the adult world, even if she'd learned it in the worst possible way. You're right. Adults do lie to children sometimes. But I'm going to make you a promise right now, and I want you to remember it. Okay? She nodded slowly. I promise that I will never lie to you, no matter how difficult the truth might be. And I promise that if there's any way at all, for you to see real butterflies and real gardens, I will find it. Tears began to form in her dark eyes, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked like what she actually was. A frightened, lonely child who desperately wanted to believe that someone cared about her well-being. Why? She whispered. Why would you help me? Because everyone deserves to see butterflies, I said simply. Even weapons. Especially weapons. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and returned to her puzzle with renewed focus. But I noticed that she kept glancing at me, as if trying to determine whether I could possibly be telling the truth. Step 1, I thought as I watched her work. Establish trust. Now I just had to figure out how to keep the promise I'd just made. Chapter 667. Heavenly Demon 4. The next morning brought disturbing revelations wrapped in bureaucratic language and clinical terminology. I'd requested access to the complete project files, exercising my cardinal authority to override standard security protocols. What I found in those classified documents made my blood run cold. Cordelia, I said quietly, sliding a particular file across our temporary office table. Look at Section 7. She opened the folder and began reading, her face growing progressively paler as she absorbed the contents. Termination Protocol Theta, she read aloud. To be implemented in the event of project compromise, external security threats, or subject psychological deterioration. There it was. The confirmation of what I'd suspected from the moment I'd seen how tightly controlled this facility was. Subject 0 wasn't just a valuable asset. She was a potential liability that could be eliminated the moment she became inconvenient. Psychological deterioration, Reika repeated, her voice tight with controlled anger. They have execution authorization if she shows too much independent thinking. I leaned back in my chair, processing the implications. My initial instinct when Cardinal Akasha had been absent was to simply walk out with the child, using my authority to override any objections. But if I'd acted on that impulse, we would have triggered the termination protocol within hours. The moment security realized she was gone, they would have activated tracking systems, pursuit teams, and ultimately the failsafe that would kill her rather than allow her to fall into enemy hands. The neural implants, I said, pointing to another section of the file. They're not just for power regulation. They contain explosive compounds. They can kill her remotely, Reka breathed. Arthur, Matthias, this changes everything. We can't just extract her. The moment they realize she's missing, she dies instantly, I finished. Which means we need a different approach. Think. The termination protocol was designed to prevent exactly what we were trying to accomplish. But every system had weaknesses, and every protocol had loopholes. I just had to find them. A soft chime from the facility's communication system interrupted my planning. Cardinal Matthias, came Saratha's voice through the speaker. We've received a priority transmission from Vatican Sanctum. Cardinal Akasha will be returning ahead of schedule. He'll arrive in 5 days rather than the originally planned 2 weeks. Shit, that compressed our timeline dramatically. Whatever we were going to do, we had less than a week to accomplish it. Acknowledged, I replied. Continue normal operations until her arrival. After the communication ended, Reka fixed me with a questioning look. What does this mean for our plans? It means we need to accelerate everything. I stood and began pacing, my mind racing through possibilities. But it also might present an opportunity. Akasha's early return suggests something has changed at the higher levels. Maybe enough chaos to provide cover for what we need to do. What exactly do we need to do? That was the question, wasn't it? Traditional extraction was impossible due to the termination protocol. Fighting our way out would trigger the same failsafe. And we couldn't simply destroy the facility. That would definitely result in the child's death. We need to disable the termination protocol first, I said slowly, the plan beginning to form. Then we need to find a way to remove the neural implants safely. Only then can we consider extraction. And how do we accomplish any of that? By making ourselves indispensable to the project. If they believe we're valuable enough, they'll share more information. Trust us with more access. I stopped pacing and looked directly at her. We need to convince them that we want to expand the program. Reka's eyes widened with understanding. You want to propose creating more children like her. More weapons, I corrected grimly. That's how they see her, so that's how we need to present our interest. Cardinal Matthias and Bishop Cordelia, impressed by the project's success and eager to establish similar programs in other regions. Of course, they know this is only possible because of the special material Cardinal Akasha got, but we can suggest creating weaker versions of her. It was a horrific plan, playing into their ambitions, encouraging their monstrous research, all while secretly working to save the one victim we'd already found. But it was the only approach that might give us the access we needed. I hate this, Reka said quietly. So do I. But it's the only way. An hour later, I was back in Subject Zero's containment chamber, but this time I carried a small bag that I'd acquired from the facility's supply stores. The child looked up when I entered, and I was gratified to see that the wariness in her expression had lessened slightly. Hello again, I said, settling into the same chair as yesterday. I brought you something. Her dark eyes fixed on the bag with curiosity, but she made no move to reach for it, still too well trained to show desire. It's not a test, I assured her. It's just a gift. I don't get gifts, she said matter-of-factly. I get rewards for good performance, but only if I earn them. Every word out of her mouth breaks my heart a little more. Well, this is different. This is just because I thought you might enjoy it. I opened the bag and withdrew a small stuffed animal, a butterfly with soft purple wings and a friendly embroidered face. It wasn't much, but it was the closest thing to an actual butterfly that the facility's limited supplies could provide. The child's reaction was immediate and heartbreaking. Her eyes went wide, and her hand moved toward the toy before she caught herself and pulled back. I can't, she whispered. Personal possessions are discouraged. They create emotional attachments that compromise operational effectiveness. They won't even let her have a stuffed animal. What if it wasn't a personal possession? What if it was educational material? She tilted her head, confusion replacing fear. Educational how? Well, you're studying pattern recognition, right? And strategic thinking. I held up the butterfly, examining its embroidered details. This could help you understand wing patterns, color distributions, symmetrical design principles. For the first time since I'd met her, she almost smiled. That's not really what it's for, isn't it? How can you be sure unless you study it carefully? Slowly, hesitantly, she reached out and touched one of the soft wings. The moment her fingers made contact, her carefully maintained composure cracked completely. She pulled the butterfly against her chest and held it tight, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll be good. I promise I'll be really good." She thinks she has to earn kindness. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This child had been so systematically deprived of basic human affection that she interpreted any gesture of kindness as something she had to repay. "You don't have to be good," I said gently. "You don't have to earn this. It's yours because you exist, not because of anything you've done or might do." She looked at me with confusion, as if I'd spoken in a foreign language. "But if I'm not good, you'll take it away."
No.
"I won't. Even if you're bad, which I don't think is possible, the butterfly is still yours." We sat in comfortable silence while she explored her new possession, her small fingers tracing the embroidered patterns with wonder. Finally, she spoke again. "What's your real name?" The question caught me completely off guard. "What do you mean? Everyone here calls you Cardinal Matthias, but that's not your real name. I can tell." She hugged the butterfly closer. "You don't feel like the other cardinals. You feel different." Perceptive child. "What makes you say that?" "The way you look at me, like I'm a person instead of a thing." She met my eyes directly. "So what's your real name?" I considered my options. Revealing my true identity would be dangerous, but continuing to lie to her felt wrong after the promise I'd made yesterday. Then I found a middle ground. "Arthur," I said quietly. "My real name is Arthur." "Arthur," she repeated, testing the sound. "I like that better than Matthias." "What about you? Do you have a name besides Subject Zero?" Her expression grew sad. "They never gave me one. Numbers are more efficient than names. That's going to change." "Would you like one?" "I'm not supposed to want things," she said automatically, but I could see the longing in her eyes. "Everyone deserves a name," I said firmly. "Even weapons, especially weapons." She was quiet for a long moment, clutching her butterfly toy. Could I think about it?" "Of course. Take all the time you need." As I prepared to leave, she called out softly. "Arthur." "Yes. Will you come back tomorrow?" "I promise." Walking back to our quarters, I reflected on the morning's revelations. The termination protocol had confirmed that simple extraction was impossible, but my conversation with the child had revealed something equally important. She was starting to trust me. That trust would be essential for whatever came next. Chapter 668. Heavenly Demon, 5. The third day brought a breakthrough that would change everything. I'd arrived at Subject Zero's containment chamber earlier than usual, carrying another small gift. A children's book about gardens that I'd convinced Sareth was educational material for pattern recognition studies. The excuse was wearing thin, but my cardinal authority still carried enough weight to override questions. The child was sitting by her small window, the purple butterfly toy clutched in her hands as she stared out at the facility's courtyard. It wasn't much of a view, concrete walls and guard towers, but she seemed fascinated by the small patch of sky visible above the barriers. "Good morning," I said, settling into my usual chair. "Arthur," she said, turning to face me with something that might have been a smile. "You came back. I promised I would." I held up the book. "I brought you something new today." Her eyes lit up with genuine excitement, though she quickly tried to hide it. The conditioning ran deep, but I was starting to see cracks in the facade they'd built around her natural personality. "What is it?" she asked, moving closer but still maintaining careful distance. A story about the most beautiful garden in the world. With pictures. I opened the book to reveal colorful illustrations of flowers, trees, and yes, butterflies. I thought you might like to see what the real ones look like. She stared at the pages with wonder, her small fingers hovering just above the illustrations as if afraid touching them might make them disappear. They're so bright, she whispered, and there are so many different kinds. Each type has its own name, I explained, pointing to different flowers in the pictures. Roses, daisies, sunflowers, lilacs, and each butterfly species has a name too. Names, she repeated thoughtfully, like Arthur instead of Cardinal Matthias. There's my opening. Speaking of names, have you given any more thought to what you might like to be called? She was quiet for a long moment, studying a page that showed a night garden illuminated by moonlight. The picture was particularly beautiful, silver flowers glowing in the darkness, with pale butterflies dancing among them like living starlight. Luna, she said finally, so quietly I almost didn't hear her. Luna. Like the moon in the picture. She looked so peaceful, watching over all the flowers. She looked up at me with those dark eyes that held far too much pain for her age. Do you think Luna is a good name? Well, isn't that interesting? Luna's amused voice echoed in my mind. Another Luna. Should I be flattered or concerned that you're developing a pattern? Perfect. I think Luna is a beautiful name. It suits you. Really? The hope in her voice was heartbreaking. Really? Luna it is, then. For the first time since I'd met her, she gave me a genuine smile. Not the careful, controlled expression she'd been trained to display, but the bright, unguarded joy of a child who had just received something precious. Thank you, Arthur, for giving me a name. For the butterfly. For. She struggled with the words. For making me feel like a person. That's exactly what you are. Luna, can I ask you something? She nodded eagerly. Do you remember anything from before this place? From when you were very small? Her expression grew thoughtful. Sometimes I have dreams. There's a woman with kind eyes who used to sing to me. But the doctor says those aren't real memories, just neural misfirings from the enhancement process. The doctor, Cardinal Akasha, almost certainly. What do you think? I think the doctor is wrong about a lot of things, Luna said with a maturity that should have been impossible at her age. She says I don't have feelings, but I do. She says I don't need things like names or toys, but I want them anyway. Smart girl. She was developing critical thinking despite their best efforts to suppress it. That would be both an asset and a danger as we moved forward. Luna, I need to ask you something important, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. She straightened, giving me her full attention. If there was a way, and I'm not saying there is, but if there was, would you want to leave this place? To see real gardens and real butterflies? Her reaction was immediate and intense. She clutched the butterfly toy to her chest and stared at me with wide eyes. Is that possible? I don't know yet, but I'm trying to find out. The implants, she said quietly, her hand moving unconsciously to touch the back of her neck, where I knew the neural interfaces were located. They told me the implants would hurt anyone who tried to take me away, that they would hurt me too. She knows about the termination protocol. Did they tell you anything else about the implants? The doctor said they keep me safe, that without them, my power would grow too fast and burn me up from the inside. She looked down at her hands. But sometimes when I'm sleeping, I can feel them, like little spiders in my head. Neural implants with explosive components, disguised as medical necessity. It was cleverly designed. The child would resist removal because she'd been convinced it would kill her anyway. Luna, what if I told you that might not be true? What if the implants weren't protecting you, but controlling you? You mean the doctor lied to me? I think the doctor has told you a lot of things that aren't true. She was quiet for several minutes, processing this information. When she spoke again, her voice was small but determined. If you found a way to take me away from here, would you? Even if it was dangerous. There it is. The question I'd been hoping she would ask. the confirmation that she wanted to be saved despite everything they'd done to break her spirit. Yes, I said without hesitation. I would do everything in my power to get you somewhere safe. Look at you getting all paternal, Luna commented with obvious amusement. Next thing you know, you'll be teaching her how to ride a bike and giving boys the talk. Not helping, Luna. Why? She asked, echoing the same question from our first real conversation. I'm just a weapon. Why would you risk yourself for a weapon? Because you're not just a weapon, Luna. You're a little girl who likes butterflies and garden stories and purple stuffed animals. You're someone who deserves to choose her own name and make her own decisions about what she wants to do with her life. Tears began forming in her eyes again. But what if they're right? What if I am dangerous? What if trying to save me hurts people? The fear they've instilled in her runs deep. Luna, do you want to hurt people?
No.
Never. Then you won't. Having power doesn't make you dangerous. Using that power to harm innocent people makes you dangerous. And I don't think that's who you are. She wiped her eyes and looked at me with a determination that was startling in someone so young. If you can find a way, I want to leave. I want to see real butterflies. I want to choose what I do with my power instead of having it chosen for me. That's my girl. Then we'll find a way. I promise. Another promise to another Luna. The Qilin observed with fond exasperation. You really do have a type, don't you? We spent the rest of the morning reading the garden book together, with Luna asking countless questions about each flower and butterfly. Her curiosity was insatiable. She wanted to know how flowers grew, what butterflies ate, whether different colors meant different things. This is who she really is. I realized as I watched her excitement over learning new things. Not the weapon they've tried to create, but a bright, curious child who's been starved of normal experiences. As I prepared to leave for the day, Luna called out to me one more time. Arthur? When you were my age, did you have a real name that people called you? Not a made-up one. Yes, I did. And you got to choose what you wanted to do when you grew up? That's a more complicated question than she realizes. More or less, yes. I want that too, she said firmly. I want to choose. Chapter 669. Heavenly Demon, 6. The morning of my visit to Luna brought an unexpected request from Deputy Commander Sereth. Cardinal Matthias, he said, intercepting me in the hallway before I could reach Luna's chamber. Dr. Vance has requested a consultation regarding the subject's recent behavioral modifications. He's particularly interested in your assessment methodology. Perfect. I'd been waiting for this opportunity. Of course, I'd be happy to share my observations with Dr. Vance. My clinical mind was already analyzing the request. They were concerned about Luna's emotional development but hadn't yet classified it as problematic enough to trigger immediate intervention. This gave me a window to establish myself as an expert consultant rather than a potential threat. A position that would grant me access to systems and information I desperately needed. Excellent. Dr. Vance will join you for today's evaluation session. 20 minutes later, I entered Luna's chamber accompanied by a thin, nervous man in a lab coat who radiated the particular brand of arrogance that came from someone who had never been told his research was monstrous. Dr. Vance, I said, extending my hand in greeting. I've reviewed your work on cognitive enhancement integration. Impressive methodology. Cardinal Matthias, he replied, his pale eyes lighting up with pleasure. I must say, your approach to subject evaluation has yielded fascinating results. We've never seen such rapid emotional development in any previous iteration. Luna looked up from her usual spot by the window, and I could see confusion flicker across her features when she noticed the additional person. Her hand instinctively moved to clutch her butterfly toy, a gesture that made my chest tighten with protective instinct. Good morning, Luna, I said, settling into my chair with deliberate casualness. I brought someone to meet you today. This is Dr. Vance. He's been helping take care of you since you were very small. Hello, Luna said politely, but I could see the wariness in her posture. She'd learned to associate new adults with unpleasant experiences. Remarkable, Dr. Vance murmured, making notes on his tablet. The subject's social recognition patterns show significant advancement. Previous iterations required extensive conditioning to achieve basic conversational response. Subject. Iterations. The clinical language when referring to her made my jaw clench, but I forced my expression to remain neutral. I've been working on pattern recognition exercises, I explained, opening the bag I'd brought. Simple cognitive stimulation to evaluate her learning capacity. What I withdrew wasn't another book or toy. It was a tablet loaded with basic educational software. But hidden beneath the surface programs was something far more sophisticated. A custom-built interface that would allow me to passively scan any network it connected to. "This is interesting, Luna," I said, powering on the device. "Would you like to try some puzzles?" Her eyes lit up with genuine excitement. "Real puzzles? On a computer?" The subject has shown remarkable aptitude for pattern recognition, Dr. Vance noted approvingly. "Cardinal, your assessment protocols are yielding exceptional data. If only you knew what I was really assessing." As Luna began working through the tablet's puzzles, simple matching games and basic logic problems, I watched Dr. Vance's reactions carefully. The man was completely absorbed in Luna's performance, noting every response time and decision pattern. He had no idea that the tablet was simultaneously mapping the facility's wireless networks, identifying security protocols, and cataloging the digital signatures of every connected device in the building, including the neural implant monitoring system. Fascinating. Dr. Vance breathed as Luna solved a particularly complex puzzle in record time. The cognitive enhancement protocols have exceeded all projections. With proper conditioning, this iteration could achieve operational readiness months ahead of schedule. Operational readiness. Another euphemism for turning her into a weapon. "Matthias," Luna said suddenly, looking up from the tablet. "This puzzle is broken." I noticed she dropped the formal cardinal title, a small sign that she was growing more comfortable with me. Good for building trust, though I'd need to remind her to maintain proper address when others were present. Dr. Vance made a note on his tablet. The subject's informal address patterns suggest developing social recognition abilities. Useful development, I thought clinically. A more trusting subject would be easier to extract when the time came. Remarkable. We've never achieved spontaneous imprinting in previous iterations. This could represent a significant breakthrough in control methodologies. Luna was looking at the tablet with focus, clearly engaged with the problem-solving aspect of the puzzles. I leaned forward to examine the puzzle she'd indicated was broken, noting how she instinctively leaned slightly toward me, a sign of growing trust. "She's starting to see me as safe," I observed. "That'll be important for cooperation during extraction." "This puzzle is actually functioning correctly," I explained gently, "but I can see why you think it's broken. The solution requires thinking about the problem differently than the others you've solved." For the next hour, I guided Luna through increasingly complex cognitive exercises while simultaneously mapping the facility's digital infrastructure. The tablet's hidden programs were working flawlessly, creating a comprehensive picture of their security systems, communication networks, and, most importantly, the implant control systems. Bingo! The neural implants operated on a secure wireless frequency, communicating with a central monitoring station that tracked everything from Luna's vital signs to her emotional state. More interestingly, the system was designed with remote override capabilities for emergency situations, like a termination protocol. "Cardinal," Dr. Vance said as the session concluded, "I must say, your evaluation methodology has provided invaluable insights. Would you be interested in consulting on the next phase of development?" "Perfect. I'd be honored to contribute to such groundbreaking research." As we prepared to leave, Luna called out softly, "Matthias, will you come back tomorrow?" "Of course," I assured her, noting how she seemed to relax at the confirmation. Building this level of trust was essential for the mission's success. Outside the chamber, Dr. Vance continued his enthusiastic commentary. "The subject's social development is remarkable. We've never achieved this level of interpersonal engagement in previous iterations. I nodded along with his analysis while my mind raced with the implications of what I'd discovered. The neural implants weren't just monitoring devices, they were comprehensive control systems capable of remote manipulation. But they were also the key to Luna's survival, and any disruption had to be carefully planned. I need more time to analyze this, I realized. And I need to be very, very careful about how I proceed. Dr. Vance, I said as we reached his office. I'd like to review the complete technical specifications for the enhancement protocols to better understand how cognitive development might affect future performance parameters. Certainly, I'll have the files transferred to your secure terminal immediately. Hook, line, and sinker. By positioning myself as a collaborator rather than a threat, I'd gained access to everything I needed to plan Luna's extraction. I didn't want to admit the warmth wrapping around my heart. Chapter 670. Heavenly Demon, 7. The 7th day of my visits to Luna brought an unexpected request from the child herself. Arthur, she said as I settled into my usual chair. What are those colorful sticks the researchers used to mark their papers? I followed her gaze to where Dr. Vance had left his tablet on the monitoring station, complete with a set of digital styluses in various colors. Those are pens for writing and drawing, I explained. They make different colored marks. Her dark eyes lit up with curiosity, an expression I was beginning to recognize and treasure. Drawing? Like the pictures in the books you bring me? Of course. Luna had been surrounded by clinical white walls and sterile equipment her entire life. The concept of creating art, of making something beautiful just for the joy of it, was completely foreign to her. Would you like to try drawing? I asked, already planning my next supply acquisition. Could I? The hope in her voice was heartbreaking. I promise I wouldn't break anything or make a mess. The fact that she has to promise not to make a mess when asking to draw. Luna, making art sometimes involves making a little mess. That's part of the fun. She looked at me with confusion, as if the concept of fun requiring explanation, which, given her upbringing, it probably did. I'll bring you some proper drawing supplies tomorrow, I promised. Colored pencils, paper, maybe some markers. Would you like that? The smile that spread across her face was radiant. Really? Just for me? Just for you. The next morning, I arrived with a small bag containing art supplies I'd convinced the facility's procurement office were cognitive development materials. Colored pencils, sketch pads, erasers, and even a few basic how-to-draw books aimed at children. Luna's reaction when I opened the bag was pure joy. She reached out tentatively to touch the colored pencils, as if afraid they might disappear. They're so pretty, she whispered. All different colors. Pick one, I encouraged. Any color you like. She selected a bright yellow pencil, holding it carefully like it was made of glass. What should I draw? Anything you want. There are no rules when it comes to art. No rules. I could see the concept struggling to take hold in her mind. Luna had lived her entire life surrounded by rules, protocols, and expectations. The idea that she could create something without guidelines was revolutionary. She started with simple lines, marveling at how the yellow pencil left marks on the white paper. Then she added more colors. Blue for what might have been sky, green for grass, red for what looked like flowers. Tell me about your picture, I said, settling back to watch her work. It's the garden from the book, she explained, adding more flowers with careful concentration. But I made the butterflies bigger so you can see them better. She's drawing from memory. The garden book I'd shown her days ago had clearly made a deep impression. But more than that, she was adapting it, making creative choices about what to emphasize. Who's this? I asked, pointing to two stick figures she'd added near the flowers. Luna blushed slightly. That's you, she said, indicating the taller figure. And that's me. We're looking at the butterflies together. The simple drawing hit me harder than it should have. Two stick figures in a garden. One tall, one small. Representing a bond that shouldn't exist but was growing stronger every day. It's beautiful, I said honestly. You're very talented. Really? She looked up at me with such earnest hope that my chest tightened. Do you think I could draw more pictures? Maybe one for you to keep. She wants to give me a gift. This child who had never owned anything of her own wanted to create something to give away. I would treasure any picture you made for me, I assured her. For the next hour, Luna drew with the focused intensity of someone discovering a new world. Simple shapes became flowers, houses, animals she'd only seen in books. Her technique was crude, but her imagination was vivid and pure. Arthur, she said as she worked on another drawing, when people live in houses like this one, she pointed to a crooked rectangle with a triangle roof. Do they draw pictures too? Many of them do. Children especially love to draw and color. Children like me? Children exactly like you. Yes, Luna. Children exactly like you. She was quiet for a moment, adding windows to her house. Do their grown-ups keep their pictures? Like you said you'd keep mine. The best grown-ups do. They put them on refrigerators or in frames, or keep them in special boxes to look at when they want to remember. Luna's pencil stilled. Remember what? How much they love the child who made the picture. She looked up at me with those two knowing eyes. Do you love me, Arthur? The question was so direct, so vulnerable, that it took my breath away. Here was a child who had never experienced love asking if she might be worthy of it. Yes, I said simply. I do love you, Luna. Tears formed in her eyes, but she was smiling. I love you too. Is that okay? Is it okay for an engineered weapon to love the man planning to steal her away? It's more than okay. It's wonderful. She returned to her drawing with renewed enthusiasm, and I found myself studying her small hands as she worked. Hands that had been designed to wield terrible power, now carefully guiding colored pencils across paper to create simple beauty. As our session ended, Luna carefully tore out her first drawing, the garden with 2 stick figures, and handed it to me. For you to remember, she said shyly. I took the picture, noting how she'd written Luna in careful letters at the bottom, along with a heart drawn in red pencil. I'll keep this forever, I promised, and meant it. Tomorrow can we draw animals? She asked hopefully. I want to learn how to draw cats. Do you think cats would like me? I think cats would adore you. And yes, we can definitely draw animals tomorrow. Walking back to our quarters, I looked down at the drawing in my hands. 2 stick figures in a garden, labeled with a child's careful handwriting and decorated with a red heart. Chapter 671. Heavenly Demon, 8. I watched Master walk away from Luna's containment chamber, noting the careful way he carried the drawing she'd given him. Even from behind, I could see the change in his posture, the protective set of his shoulders, the gentleness in his movements that hadn't been there a week ago. He's falling in love with her, I realized, and the thought made my chest warm in ways I wasn't prepared for. Bishop Cordelia, Dr. Vance approached with his ever-present tablet. I was hoping to discuss the subject's recent behavioral modifications with you. Your psychological evaluation reports have been interesting. If only you knew how carefully crafted those reports were. Of course, Doctor. What specific aspects would you like to discuss? The emotional development patterns. We've never seen such rapid socialization in any previous iteration. Your assessment methodology appears to be yielding exceptional results. I maintained my professional expression while internally cringing at his clinical language. Previous iteration. As if Luna's predecessors weren't children who died in agony. The subject responds well to structured interaction, I said carefully. Consistent positive reinforcement appears to accelerate cognitive and emotional development. Consistent positive reinforcement. Such cold words for what was actually love, kindness, and basic human decency. Fascinating. And the attachment behaviors toward Cardinal Matthias. Natural development given the frequency and quality of their interactions, I replied. The subject has formed a positive association with Cardinal Matthias due to his patient evaluation approach. Would you recommend expanding this approach? Perhaps having you conduct similar attachment-building sessions? Yes, my heart said immediately. Yes, let me spend time with her too. Let me be part of whatever family Master is building. That could provide valuable comparative data, I said aloud. I'd be willing to conduct supplementary behavioral assessments. Dr. Vance nodded approvingly. Excellent. I'll have your sessions scheduled immediately. The subject seems to benefit from humanized interaction protocols. Humanized interaction protocols. He meant treating Luna like a person instead of a weapon, though he'd never phrase it that way. An hour later, I found myself standing outside Luna's chamber for my first solo visit. Through the observation window, I could see her sitting at her small table, carefully working on another drawing with the colored pencils Master Arthur had brought her. I activated the door controls and stepped inside.
Hello, Luna.
She looked up from her artwork, and I saw recognition flash in her dark eyes. You're Bishop Cordelia. You're always with Arthur when he visits. Arthur, not Cardinal Matthias. She felt safe enough to use his real name even with me present. That's right. I was hoping to spend some time with you today, if that's all right. Luna tilted her head, studying me with the direct gaze of a child unused to deception. Are you going to ask me questions like the doctors do? About how I feel and what I think? The doctors. More people who saw her as a subject to be analyzed rather than a child to be cared for. No questions like that, I assured her, moving to sit in the chair Master Arthur usually occupied. I was actually hoping you might show me your drawings. Her face lit up immediately. Really? You want to see them? Very much. For the next few minutes, Luna showed me her artwork with the enthusiasm of any child sharing something they'd created. Stick figure gardens, wobbly animals, houses that defied architectural physics but radiated warmth and imagination. This one is my favorite, she said, pointing to a drawing of what appeared to be 3 stick figures standing together. It's Arthur and me and you. My breath caught. Me? You're always taking care of Arthur, and Arthur takes care of me, so that makes us... She paused, searching for the right word. Like a family, right? Like a family. The casual way she said it, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, made my heart skip a beat. Do you know what families are like, Luna? I asked gently. Not really, she admitted. But Arthur tells me stories sometimes. About people who live together and take care of each other and love each other even when they make mistakes. Master has been telling her about families. Of course he has. He's been preparing her for the life she deserves to have. That's exactly right, I said. Families are people who choose to love each other. Choose. Luna's eyes widened. You mean it's not something that just happens? People decide to be family? Sometimes. The very best families are the ones where people choose each other. Luna looked down at her drawing, then back up at me. Do you think Arthur chose me? Like family? Oh, sweetheart. The hope in her voice was almost too much to bear. I think Arthur cares about you very much, I said carefully. And yes, I think he's chosen you as someone special to him. What about you? The question was so quiet I almost missed it. Do you care about me too? The words hit me like a physical blow. This little girl, this brave, artistic, loving child, was asking if I cared about her. And the answer that rose in my throat surprised me with its intensity. Yes, I whispered. Yes, Luna. I care about you very much. The smile that spread across her face was like sunrise after a long night. Really? So we all care about each other? You and Arthur and me. Master and my daughter. The thought appeared in my mind unbidden, and I felt heat rise in my cheeks. What am I thinking? Our daughter? When had I started thinking of Luna that way? The idea of her calling me something like Mama Rekha made my face burn with embarrassment at my own presumption. Luna, I said, trying to regain my composure. What do you know about mothers? Mothers. She looked confused. Arthur mentioned them sometimes. They're like fathers, but different. Ladies who take care of children. She doesn't even know what a mother is. The casual cruelty of her upbringing hit me anew. That's right. Mothers are women who love and protect children. They teach them things and comfort them when they're scared and are proud of them when they accomplish something. Luna was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Then she looked up at me with those two wise eyes. Do you think, could someone like you be a mother to someone like me? The question made my heart stop entirely. The way she phrased it, so carefully, so hopefully, as if she didn't dare ask directly but wanted to know if it was possible. The thought of Luna calling me Mama made my cheeks burn. The image of her and Master as a real family, with me as his wife in raising her. What am I thinking? The rational part of my mind tried to reassert control. This is a mission. We're here to extract intelligence, not adopt children. But looking at Luna's hopeful face, at the drawing of 3 stick figures she'd labeled as family, rationality seemed less important than the overwhelming urge to protect this child. I think, I said carefully, that you deserve to have people who care about you like family does, people who want to protect you and help you grow. Luna nodded thoughtfully, then smiled. I think that would be nice. If only she knew how much I already want to protect her. The thought of Luna someday calling me something maternal, maybe Mama Cordelia, made my heart race and my cheeks burn with embarrassment at my own presumption. What would it be like? I wondered, watching Luna return to her drawing. To have Master and I raising her together? To be a real family? The fantasy was so appealing it was almost painful. Luna beamed and immediately returned to her drawing, adding details to the 3 stick figures with renewed enthusiasm. As she worked, she chattered about the people she was drawing, how Arthur was kind and brought her books, and how I was nice and answered her questions, and how maybe someday they could all be together somewhere with a garden. A house with a garden. She was imagining a future together, this child who'd never experienced anything beyond sterile walls and clinical procedures. I watched her work, noting the careful way she drew each figure, the hope evident in every line. In her mind, we were becoming something like a family. She was choosing us as much as we were choosing her. We have to save her, I thought fiercely. Not just extract her. Save her. Give her the family she deserves. Cordelia? Luna's voice broke through my thoughts. Yes, sweetheart. Do you think, when people leave places like this, do they really get to stay with the people who care about them? The question was asked with such innocent hope that it nearly broke my heart. She was asking if we would really save her, if we would really be her family, without quite daring to say the words directly. Yes, Luna, I said aloud. When people find their real family, they get to stay together. She smiled and returned to her drawing, humming softly to herself as she worked, and sitting there watching Master Arthur's, this precious child, create art with colored pencils. I realized that my mission priorities had fundamentally shifted. It was about saving this little girl who was already becoming so important to both Master and me. Chapter 672. Heavenly Demon, 9. I stared at the magical ward analysis Luna had helped me piece together, hardly believing what we'd discovered. After days of her guiding my understanding of the magical construct, we'd finally found it. A critical flaw in the ward's construction that could be exploited. The anchor points aren't perfectly synchronized, Luna explained in my mind, her knowledge of ancient magical theory proving invaluable. There's a brief moment during the ward's renewal cycle where the binding weakens. If you can time a disruption correctly. How long do we have? I asked. Approximately 37 seconds when the ward cycles. More than enough time to get the little one past the boundary, assuming you can handle the magical requirements. The ward that had seemed impenetrable just days ago now had a clear vulnerability. But exploiting it would require precise magical timing and a level of power manipulation I wasn't entirely confident I possessed. Arthur. Luna's voice pulled me from my magical theorizing. You look different today. Are you okay? I looked up from my notes to find her watching me with those two perceptive dark eyes. She was sitting at her small table, but instead of drawing random pictures, she had what appeared to be architectural plans spread out in front of her. Plans? What are you working on there? Her face lit up with excitement. It's our house. The one we're going to live in when we leave here. She gestured eagerly for me to come look. I've been planning it for days. I moved to stand behind her chair, looking down at what was indeed a remarkably detailed floor plan drawn in colored pencil. The layout showed a modest 2-story house with careful attention to practical details. Kitchen, living room, bedrooms, even a small garden space. She's been planning our future. The realization hit me harder than it should have. This is your room, Luna explained, pointing to a large bedroom on the second floor. And this is mine right next to yours so I won't be scared at night. And this, she indicated a slightly smaller room across the hall, is for Cordelia, because she's part of our family too. Our family. She'd not only been planning for me and herself, but had automatically included Reika in her domestic fantasy. Look at that, Luna the Qilin observed with obvious amusement. The little one's already planning your domestic life together. She's more organized than you are. And see this. Luna continued, her excitement building. The kitchen has a big window so we can see the garden while we cook. And there's a reading corner in the living room where you can read to me. And the garden has space for butterflies and flowers and maybe even a tree we could climb. I studied the drawing more carefully, noting details I'd missed initially. She'd included mundane necessities like bathrooms and closets, but also thoughtful touches like an art room, where she could draw, and a thinking spot that appeared to be a window seat with cushions. Luna, I said carefully, this is very detailed. Where did you learn about house layouts? From the books you brought me, she said proudly. Some of them had pictures of houses, and I studied them really carefully. I wanted to make sure our house would have everything we need to be happy. Everything we need to be happy. Such a simple goal from someone who'd never experienced happiness in any meaningful way. The original plan flashed through my mind: extract the heavenly demon clone, use her power for my own purposes, prevent the catastrophic future described in the saga. Luna had been meant to be a tool, a weapon I could wield against greater threats. And now look at you, Luna the Qilin commented with gentle amusement, planning to build her a house with a butterfly garden. You've gone completely soft, Arthur. She's not a weapon anymore, I admitted to myself. She's just a little girl who wants a house with a garden and a family to love her. The transformation in my thinking was complete now, I realized. Somewhere over the past week, my mission objectives had fundamentally shifted. I was no longer planning to extract an asset. I was planning to save a little girl. The thought still felt surreal. I was 19 years old, barely an adult myself, yet here I was developing paternal instincts for a child who called me by my first name and drew pictures of our future home. Age is just a number when it comes to caring about someone, Luna the Qilin observed. You're more mature than most adults, Arthur. And that little girl needs someone who will put her first. Arthur. Luna's voice carried a note of uncertainty. Do you like the house? It's perfect, I interrupted, my voice rougher than intended. Absolutely perfect. The relief on her face was palpable. Really? You think we'll be happy there? We, never just her. This child who'd been raised in isolation was incapable of imagining happiness that didn't include the people she'd come to love. I think we'll be very happy, I assured her. For the next hour, Luna walked me through every detail of her planned house. Where we'd put furniture, how the garden would be laid out, what colors she wanted to paint the rooms. She'd thought through practical considerations like proximity to schools and shops, but also emotional ones like making sure the living room was arranged so the family could spend time together. She's nesting, I realized. This is a child preparing for the family life she's never had. When our session ended, I found myself holding Luna's house plans with the same careful reverence I'd shown her first drawing. This wasn't just artwork. It was a blueprint for the life she wanted to build with us. Walking back to our quarters, I reflected on how completely my priorities had changed. The analytical part of my mind could still recite the original mission parameters, but those felt distant and irrelevant now. What mattered was the drawing in my hands and the child who'd created it. I'm going to give her that house, I decided. Somehow, someway, she's going to get her garden and her reading corner and her family. I found Reika waiting in our quarters with her own collection of reports and data files. She looked up when I entered, and I saw something shift in her expression when she noticed the drawing in my hands. Another picture? She asked, though her tone suggested she already knew it was something more significant. House plans, I said, spreading Luna's drawing on our table. She's been designing the home she wants us to share. Reka leaned over to examine the layout, and I watched her face soften as she took in the details. When she reached the room labeled Cordelia's room, she inhaled sharply. She included me, Reka said quietly. She planned a room for me. She considers you part of the family, I confirmed. Has from the beginning, I think. We stood there in silence, both studying a child's vision of domestic happiness. Finally, Reka spoke again. Arthur, what are we doing? The question was loaded with implications. What are we doing falling in love with a child we came here to extract? What are we doing planning a future that has nothing to do with our original objectives? What are we doing pretending we could be parents when we're barely adults ourselves? I don't know, I admitted. I came here planning to use her power to extract her as an asset. But now she's drawing us house plans and calling us family, Reka finished. Are you having second thoughts? I asked, studying her expression carefully. Reka was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the outline of the garden Luna had drawn. When she finally spoke, her voice was firm.
No.
If anything, I'm more committed than ever. She looked up at me, and I saw determination in her eyes. That little girl deserves the life she's planning. She deserves parents who will love her, not use her. Parents. There it was, the word neither of us had quite been willing to say out loud. We're 19 and 21, I pointed out. We're children ourselves in many ways, and I have 4 other girlfriends. So, Reka's expression grew thoughtful. Age doesn't determine whether you can love a child, Arthur. And Luna needs love more than she needs anything else. I'm sure the 4 of them will also understand. She was right, of course. Luna's needs were emotional, not practical. She needed stability, affection, and the security of knowing she was wanted for who she was rather than what she could do. The ward has a vulnerability, I said abruptly, shifting focus back to practical matters before I got too lost in domestic fantasies. Luna helped me understand the magical construct's weakness. Reka's demeanor immediately sharpened. What kind of vulnerability? There's a brief moment during the ward's renewal cycle where the binding weakens. Luna? I gestured vaguely at my head, indicating my Chilean companion. Says it's a common flaw in wards of this complexity. 37 seconds where the magical barrier becomes permeable. Tell her about the power requirements, Luna reminded me. The downside is that exploiting it requires precise magical timing and significant power. I'll need to channel a disruption spell at exactly the right moment. And the neural implants? Those are actually easier. I can hack the control system remotely and initiate a safe shutdown sequence. The implants will power down gradually rather than shutting off all at once. I spread out my own technical diagrams alongside Luna's house plans. The contrast was stark, cold engineering schematics next to a child's loving vision of home. When? Reka asked simply. Soon. Cardinal Akasha returns in 3 days, maybe less. If we're going to do this, it has to be before then. Reka nodded, studying both sets of plans. Then we'd better make sure everything goes perfectly. Luna's counting on us. Luna's counting on us. The weight of that responsibility settled on my shoulders, but it didn't feel crushing. If anything, it felt purposeful. For the first time since arriving at this facility, I had a goal that mattered more than strategic objectives or mission parameters. Chapter 673, Heavenly Demon, 10. I pressed my face against the small window in my room. Watching the guards change shifts like Arthur taught me to notice. The patterns are always the same: 3 minutes when no one is watching this corridor. 3 whole minutes when I can pretend I'm not Subject Zero, when I can just be Luna. Tomorrow, I whisper to my butterfly toy, clutching it tight against my chest. Tomorrow Arthur and Cordelia are going to take me away from here. The thought makes my stomach feel funny. Not bad funny, but excited funny. Like when Arthur first brought me colored pencils, or when he told me I could choose my own name. But bigger. So much bigger it's almost scary. I've been practicing what I want to say to Arthur when we escape. Important words that I've been too nervous to use, even though I think about them all the time. Words that make me feel warm and safe just thinking them. Daddy. I whisper it to my butterfly, testing how it sounds. Daddy Arthur. It feels right, like puzzle pieces clicking together. Not scary right like when the doctors say I'm performing well, but happy right like when Arthur reads me stories. But what if he doesn't want me to call him that? What if I'm wrong about what we are? I shake my head, remembering what Arthur always tells me. You can ask me anything, Luna. I'll always tell you the truth. The truth. Arthur has never lied to me, not once. When I ask hard questions, he thinks carefully and gives me real answers. When other adults ask me things, they want specific responses. When Arthur asks me things, he actually wants to know what I think. That's what daddies do, I realize. They want to know what their children think because they care about them. I pull out the drawing I've been working on in secret, the one I want to give Arthur tomorrow. It's not like my other pictures. This one is special because it shows the truth about what I hope we are. In the drawing, there are 3 stick figures holding hands. The tall one is labeled Daddy Arthur in my best handwriting. The medium one says Mama Cordelia. And the small one in the middle, with pigtails and a big smile, says Luna. Not Subject Zero. Not the weapon. Just Luna standing between 2 people who chose to love her. Is that what families do? I wonder, studying my drawing. They choose each other? Arthur always talks about choices. How I get to choose what I draw, what stories I want to hear, what name I want to use. But the most important choice, whether I get to be their daughter, that's not just up to me. They have to choose me too. But they did choose me, I remind myself. Arthur said he loves me. Cordelia said she cares about me. They're risking everything to take me away from here. The sound of footsteps in the hallway makes me quickly hide my drawing under my pillow. It's too early for Arthur's visit, but I've learned to be careful. The doctors don't like when I have unauthorized emotional attachments. Stupid doctors. I think using a word Arthur told me was for expressing frustration privately. They don't understand anything about families or love or being happy. The footsteps pass by without stopping, and I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Soon those footsteps won't matter anymore. Soon I'll be walking down different hallways, in a real house with Arthur and Cordelia. I close my eyes and picture the house I drew for Arthur, our house. I imagine waking up in my own room, with real windows that show a real garden. I imagine Arthur making breakfast in the kitchen while Cordelia helps me get dressed. I imagine all of us sitting together at a table, eating food that isn't measured and calculated but just tastes good. Will Arthur still read me stories when we live in our house? I wonder. Will Cordelia still help me with my drawings? The thought makes me a little worried. Right now, Arthur and Cordelia visit me because it's their job. But when we leave here, when I'm not a subject anymore, will they still want to spend time with me? Don't be silly, I tell myself. That's not how love works. Arthur explained it to me. Arthur said love isn't something you earn by being good enough or useful enough. Love is something people give because they want to, because caring about someone makes them happy. He said the best kind of love is when people choose each other not because they have to, but because they can't imagine being apart. That's how I feel about Arthur and Cordelia, I realize. I can't imagine being apart from them. The idea of being separated from them makes my chest hurt in a way that has nothing to do with my enhancements or the implants. It's a different kind of hurt, the kind that comes from caring about someone so much that losing them would break something inside you. Is that what it means to love someone like family? I wonder. When the thought of losing them hurts more than anything else? I think about the stories Arthur has told me about normal families. Parents who worry when their children are late coming home. Children who miss their parents when they're at school. People who celebrate birthdays and holidays together because being together makes ordinary days special. I want that. I admit to my butterfly toy. I want to worry about Arthur and Cordelia when they're gone. I want them to worry about me. I want us to celebrate things together just because we're family. The door to my room opens, and my heart jumps until I see Arthur's familiar face. He's early today, and there's something different about his expression. More serious, but also more hopeful. "Good morning, Luna," he says, settling into his usual chair. "How are you feeling today?" like I'm going to explode from excitement and nervousness. I think, but what I say is, I'm good. Are you? Is everything okay? Arthur smiles, but it's his careful smile, the one he uses when he wants to tell me something important but doesn't want to scare me. Luna, I need to talk to you about something very important. Can you come sit with me? My stomach does the funny flip-flop thing again as I walk over to Arthur's chair. He pats his knee, and I climb up to sit on his lap like I sometimes do when I'm scared or sad. His arms come around me automatically, holding me safe and secure. This is what having a daddy feels like. I think with sudden certainty. Being held like you're precious and protected and loved. Luna, Arthur says quietly, tomorrow night we're going to leave this place. All three of us, you, me, and Cordelia. We're going to go somewhere safe where no one can hurt you or make you do things you don't want to do. Even though I knew this was coming, hearing it out loud makes everything feel real in a way that's both wonderful and terrifying. Really? I whisper. We're really going to leave? Really? Arthur confirms. But it might be scary sometimes. There might be moments when you're frightened or confused. I need you to trust me and Cordelia completely. Can you do that? I nod without hesitation. I trust you more than anyone in the whole world. Arthur's arms tighten around me, and I can feel something change in the way he's holding me, like he's memorizing how it feels to have me close, or like he's making a promise with his whole body. Luna, he says, and his voice sounds different, softer and stronger at the same time. I want you to know that no matter what happens, no matter where we go or what challenges we face, you will always be my family. Do you understand? Family. The word makes my heart feel so full I think it might burst. Arthur, I say, looking up at his face. His blue eyes are shiny, like he might cry, but he's smiling too. Can I ask you something? Anything. I take a deep breath, gathering all my courage. This is the most important question I've ever asked, and I need to be brave enough to hear the answer. When we leave here, when we go to our new house, could I swallow hard, my voice getting smaller. Could I call you Daddy? Arthur goes very still. For a moment, I worry I've said something wrong, that I've asked for too much. But then I see his expression, and it's not upset or uncomfortable. It's something else entirely. Something that makes me feel warm all the way down to my toes. Luna, he says, and his voice is thick with emotion. I would be honored if you called me Daddy. More honored than you could ever know. Relief and happiness crash over me like a wave. I throw my arms around Arthur's neck, burying my face against his shoulder. I love you, Daddy, I whisper, using the word out loud for the first time. I love you so much. I feel Arthur's body shake slightly, and when he speaks, his voice is rough around the edges. I love you too, sweetheart. My brave, wonderful daughter. Daughter. He called me his daughter. Not subject, not asset, not weapon. Daughter. We sit like that for a long time, holding each other and letting the reality of what we are sink in. I have a daddy now. Arthur has a daughter. Tomorrow we're going to start our real family, in a real house with real happiness. Tomorrow, I think, clutching my butterfly toy between us. Tomorrow I get to be Luna, and Arthur gets to be Daddy, and we never have to pretend to be anything else ever again. Chapter 674. Heavenly Demon, 11. The word hit me like a physical blow, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. Luna, my daughter, had just called me Daddy for the first time, and the sound of it completely unmade every emotional barrier I'd spent years building. Daddy. She actually said it, Luna observed in my mind, her voice warm with approval. Look at you, Arthur. You're a father now. I don't know what I'm doing, I replied, still holding Luna against my chest as she whispered how much she loved me. I'm 19 years old. I have no idea how to be anyone's father. Love her, protect her, put her needs before your own. That's all any parent needs to know. Looking down at Luna's small face, seeing the absolute trust and adoration in her dark eyes, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. This wasn't just mission evolution anymore. This was complete identity transformation. I wasn't Arthur the strategist or Arthur the operative. I was Arthur the father, and that role took precedence over everything else. Daddy. Luna's voice was small and uncertain. Are you okay? You got really quiet. I blinked, realizing I'd been staring at her for long moments without speaking. I'm perfect, sweetheart. Just happy. So incredibly happy. Her smile could have powered the entire facility. Me too. I've been wanting to call you Daddy for days. But I was scared you might not want me to. Not want her to? The idea was absurd. I'd been dreaming about hearing that word from her lips since the moment I realized I loved her. Luna, I said seriously, there is nothing in this world I want more than to be your daddy. Nothing. For the next hour, we talked through the escape plan in terms an 8-year-old could understand. I explained that tomorrow evening, during the shift change, we would leave together. That there might be alarms or scary noises, but she should stay close to me and Cordelia and trust that we would keep her safe. Will I get to bring my butterfly? She asked, clutching the purple toy protectively. Of course. And your drawings, and anything else that's important to you. Luna nodded seriously, then climbed down from my lap to retrieve something from under her pillow. When she returned, she was holding a folded piece of paper. I made this for you, she said shyly. For when we leave. I wanted you to have it. I unfolded the paper to reveal another of Luna's drawings. But this one was different from all the others. 3 stick figures held hands under a rainbow, with careful labels in Luna's best handwriting. Daddy Arthur, Mama Cordelia, and Luna. The drawing wasn't just artwork. It was a declaration. A statement of who we were and who we wanted to be. This is beautiful, I managed, my voice thick with emotion. The most beautiful picture I've ever seen. Do you really think Cordelia wants to be like a mama to me? Luna asked, unconsciously echoing the question that had been nagging at me. Reika loves that child as much as you do, Luna assured me mentally. I've seen how she looks at her. Like she'd fight the world to keep her safe. I know she does, I told Luna honestly. Cordelia loves you very much. We both do. After I left Luna's chamber, I found Reika waiting in our quarters with expressions of barely contained anxiety and determination. The final preparations were complete. I'd successfully compromised every system in the facility, the magical disruption spell was ready, and our extraction route was planned down to the minute. How is she? Reika asked immediately. She called me Daddy, I said, and watched Reika's face transform. She did. Reika's hand flew to her mouth, eyes instantly shining with tears. Oh, Arthur, how do you feel? Terrified, elated, completely out of my depth. Like my heart might explode from happiness. Like a father, I said simply. For a moment, we just looked at each other, both processing the magnitude of what was happening. Tomorrow night, we would no longer be Arthur and Reika on a mission. We would be parents, taking our daughter home to join our family. Our family. The thought encompassed more than just the 3 of us. Rose, Cecilia, Serafina, and Rachel would all be part of Luna's life too. She'd have not just parents, but a whole extended family of people who loved Arthur and would love her by extension. She drew us a family picture, I added, showing Reika Luna's latest artwork. She labeled you Mama Cordelia. Reika took the drawing with shaking hands, studying the 3 stick figures with wonder. She wants me to be her mama? More than anything, though we'll need to figure out how to explain to her about the others, I said gently. About our family situation. Reika's expression grew thoughtful. She's going to have so many people who love her. Rachel will spoil her rotten, and Cecilia will probably want to teach her strategy games. Rose will sing her lullabies, and Serafina. She smiled. Serafina will teach her how to be strong. The idea of Luna being surrounded by so much love, so many maternal figures who would protect and nurture her, made my chest warm with contentment. I watched Reika trace the crayon lines with her finger, her expression cycling through joy, fear, and fierce protectiveness. Arthur, what if we mess this up? What if we're not good enough parents for her? The same doubt I've been having. Then we'll learn, I said firmly. We'll make mistakes and apologize for them and do better next time. That's what real parents do. You're both overthinking this, Luna interjected in my mind. That little girl doesn't need perfect parents. She needs people who love her unconditionally. You've already proven you can do that. Reika set the drawing down carefully, treating it like the precious artifact it was. When she calls me Mama for the first time, I'm gonna cry. Fair warning. I nearly cried when she called me Daddy, I admitted. Actually, I think I did cry a little. We spent the rest of the day going over contingency plans and backup protocols, but my mind kept drifting to Luna's drawing. 3 stick figures under a rainbow holding hands and smiling. Such a simple image, but it represented everything I'd never known I wanted. Chapter 675. Heavenly Demon, 12. The facility's night cycle brought the usual reduction in security personnel, but tonight felt different. There was tension in the air, a sense of anticipation that made my nerves hum with readiness. The magical ward cycle will begin in 37 minutes. Luna informed me as I made my final preparations. Are you ready for this? As ready as I'll ever be. Reika and I had spent hours going over every detail of the extraction. She would handle the physical security elements while I focused on the magical components. Luna would stay close to me throughout the process, following the instructions we'd practiced during our evaluation sessions. Guards are in position, Reika whispered through our communication link. Shift change in 15 minutes. I closed my eyes, centering myself for what was to come. Everything depended on precise timing and flawless execution. One mistake, one moment of hesitation, and Luna would die. You can do this, Luna assured me. I'll guide you through the magical disruption. At exactly 2,247 hours, I activated the first phase of my infiltration protocol. Security cameras throughout the facility began displaying looped footage from the previous night, creating blind spots in their surveillance network. Emergency lockdown protocols engaged on selected doors, trapping most of the security force in distant sections of the building. Phase 1 complete, I reported to Reika. Moving to Luna's chamber. The corridors were eerily quiet as I made my way through the facility. My cardinal credentials granted me access to restricted areas, and the few guards I encountered simply nodded respectfully as I passed. They had no idea they were watching their facility's destruction in real time. Luna was waiting for me when I entered her chamber, fully dressed and clutching her butterfly toy. Her small backpack contained her drawings, the books I'd given her, and the few personal items she'd accumulated during our time together. Is it time, Daddy? She asked, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what we were attempting. It's time, sweetheart. Are you ready? She nodded solemnly. I trust you. Those 3 words carry more weight than any oath or promise. I thought as I knelt to her level. This child is trusting me with her life, her future, her happiness. Remember what we practiced, I said gently. Stay close to me. Do exactly what I tell you, and everything will be fine. Phase 2 initiated. Reika's voice crackled through my earpiece. Neural implant control systems are compromised. You're clear for magical disruption. I placed my hand on Luna's shoulder, feeling the subtle vibration of the neural implants beneath her skin. With careful precision, I began the shutdown sequence, gradually reducing their power output to minimize the risk of neural damage. This might feel strange for a moment, I warned Luna as the implants powered down, like falling asleep and waking up at the same time. Luna's eyes widened as the constant background hum of the implants faded to nothing. For the first time in her life, her mind was completely her own. I can't feel them anymore, she whispered in amazement. The buzzing in my head is gone. The implants are fully disabled, I confirmed, checking her vital signs. Her enhanced physiology was adapting well to the sudden freedom from artificial control. How do you feel? Different. Like I'm really me for the first time. Luna looked up at me with wonder. Is this what normal feels like? Normal. Such a simple concept that this child had never experienced. It's what free feels like, I corrected gently. Come on, sweetheart. Let's go find Cordelia. We moved through the corridors with careful precision. Luna's small hand clasped tightly in mine. The facility's compromised security systems worked in our favor. Locked doors opened at my approach, cameras showed empty hallways, and the few automated systems that might have detected Luna's unusual energy signature were offline. The magical ward cycle is beginning, Luna announced as we approached the facility's outer perimeter. 30 seconds until the window opens. Reika was waiting for us at the designated rendezvous point, her expression tense but determined. When she saw Luna, her face transformed with relief and joy. "Hello, sweetheart," Reika whispered, dropping to Luna's level. "Are you ready for our adventure?"
Mama Cordelia.
Luna threw herself into Reika's arms without hesitation, and I watched my partner's composure completely crumble. Tears streamed down her face as she held our daughter close. "Called it," I thought with amusement, remembering Reika's prediction about crying the first time Luna called her mama. "Magical window opening in 10 seconds," I announced, focusing on the ward structure. "Guide me through this, Luna. Feel for the anchor points. There. Do you sense the resonance lag?" I did. The complex magical construct that had imprisoned Luna for 8 years suddenly revealed its weakness. A brief moment of vulnerability in its endless cycle. "Now," Luna commanded. I channeled my power into a precisely timed disruption spell, targeting the lag in the ward's renewal sequence. For 37 precious seconds, the barrier that would have killed Luna simply wasn't there. "Move," I commanded, and we sprinted through the gap as reality itself bent around us. The cool night air hit Luna's face for the first time in her life, and she gasped in wonder. "Daddy, are those stars?" "They are, sweetheart," I confirmed, not slowing our pace. "You can look at them all you want once we're safe." Behind us, alarms began blaring as the facility systems registered the security breach. Emergency lights flooded the compound, and I could hear shouts as guards mobilized to respond to the crisis. "Too late," I thought with satisfaction. "By the time they figure out what happened, we'll be long gone." Reika led us to the extraction vehicle she'd prepared. A nondescript transport loaded with supplies and equipped with magical shielding to mask our signatures. Luna climbed into the back seat, still clutching her butterfly toy, her eyes wide with excitement and fear. "Are we really free?" she asked as I started the engine. "We're really free," Reika confirmed, reaching back to squeeze Luna's hand. "We're going home, sweetheart." For the first hour of our escape, everything went perfectly. The facility's response was sluggish and disorganized. Our route was clear of pursuit, and Luna gradually relaxed as the reality of her freedom sank in. "This is actually working," I marveled as we put kilometers between ourselves and the facility. "We're actually going to pull this off." "Daddy," Luna said sleepily from the back seat, "will you tell me about our house again? The one with the garden." "Of course, sweetheart. We're going to have a big garden with lots of flowers and butterflies that you can watch from your bedroom window. And there will be other people there who love you and want to meet you." "Multiple contacts approaching from the southeast," Reika interrupted, checking her scanner.
Fast movas magical signatures.
"Pursuit team." My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I pushed our transport to its maximum speed. "How did they track us so quickly?" "Daddy." Luna's voice was small and frightened. "Are the bad people coming?" "Don't worry, sweetheart. We're not going back there. I promise." For the next 20 minutes, we played a deadly game of cat and mouse through the countryside. Our pursuers were fast and well-equipped, but Reika's preparations and my knowledge of the terrain kept us ahead of them. "We're going to make it," I thought as our destination came into view. "Another few minutes and we'll be clear." That's when the world exploded into brilliant white light. The transport's emergency systems screamed warnings as massive magical energies erupted around us. Not from our pursuers, this was something else. Something that had been hidden in the facility's deepest systems. "Emergency teleportation protocol activated." An artificial voice announced from nowhere and everywhere. "Asset retrieval in progress." What the hell? My question was cut off as reality twisted around us. The steering wheel vanished from my hands. The road disappeared beneath us, and the stars overhead began to spin like a child's toy. "Daddy!" Luna screamed, reaching for me as the teleportation magic seized control of our bodies. I fought against the magical forces, trying to maintain contact with my daughter, but it was like trying to hold onto water. The spell was too powerful, too precisely crafted to be resisted. Fail-safe system, I realized with dawning horror. They built a contingency into the facility itself. If the asset was ever compromised, teleport it directly to cult territory. The last thing I saw before the world dissolved completely was Luna's terrified face. Her small hands stretching toward mine as forces beyond our control dragged us into the unknown. Eastern continent. Luna's voice echoed in my mind as consciousness faded. "They're taking you to the heart of Red Chalice territory." Then everything went dark, and our perfect escape became our worst nightmare. Chapter 676. Escape 1. I regained consciousness on cold stone, my head pounding from the forced teleportation. The magical displacement had dumped us in what appeared to be ancient ruins, crumbling walls and broken pillars that spoke of a civilization long dead. The acrid smell of sulfur and decay hung in the air, telling me exactly where we were. Eastern continent, I confirmed grimly, helping Luna to her feet. Red Chalice territory. "Daddy!" Luna's voice was small and frightened. The teleportation had disoriented her badly, and she clung to my arm with shaking hands. "Where are we?" "Somewhere we're not supposed to be," I replied, scanning our surroundings for immediate threats. "But we're together, and that's what matters." Reika groaned as she pushed herself upright, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. "Teleportation failsafe," she spat. "They built it into the facility's core systems as insurance." Of course they did. The Red Chalice cult hadn't survived this long by leaving things to chance. If their most valuable asset was compromised, they'd want it transported somewhere they could reclaim it quickly. "Multiple contacts approaching," Reika warned, checking her weapons. "Fast movers with supernatural signatures." I could sense them too, vampiric presences moving through the ruins with predatory grace. At least 6, maybe more, closing in on our position with coordinated precision. "Luna," I said firmly, kneeling to her level. "I need you to stay close to me and do exactly what I say. Can you do that?" She nodded solemnly, clutching her butterfly toy. "I trust you, Daddy." "That trust is going to get us all killed if I can't keep her safe," I thought grimly. The first vampire emerged from behind a broken column, a bishop rank with pale skin and predatory eyes that glowed crimson in the dim light. He moved with fluid grace, confident in his superiority over mere mortals. "Subject 0, he said, his voice carrying the arrogance of someone used to being obeyed. "You will come with us now. Resistance will only prolong your suffering." Subject 0. Even here, even now, they still saw Luna as nothing more than a weapon to be reclaimed. "Her name is Luna," I said coldly, stepping protectively in front of my daughter. "And she's not going anywhere with you." The vampire laughed, revealing fangs that gleamed like ivory daggers. "Foolish mortal, you have no idea what you're dealing with." "No," I thought as power began to build in my hands. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." I struck without warning, channeling gravitational force into a lance of pure destruction. The vampire's confident expression vanished as the attack punched through his chest, liquefying his heart and spine in a spray of crimson. "Impossible!" Another vampire hissed as his companion crumpled to dust. "How did a mere human?" Reika's blade took his head before he could finish the question. She moved like liquid death, her enhanced reflexes and training making her a nightmare opponent, even for supernatural predators. 2 down. At least 4 more to go. "Protect Luna," I called to Reika as more vampires emerged from concealment. "I'll handle the heavy hitters." What followed was brutal and efficient. These vampires were powerful, bishop and elder rank, with centuries of experience and supernatural abilities that could level buildings. But they'd made 2 critical mistakes. First, they'd underestimated us. They expected frightened fugitives, not seasoned combatants with specialized training and equipment. Second, they'd threatened my daughter. The fury of a protective parent is something these monsters have never experienced. I realized as I tore through their ranks with calculated savagery. They don't understand what they're facing. An elder rank vampire materialized behind me, moving faster than thought, before I could move to counter him. "Don't hurt my daddy." Power exploded outward from Luna's position. Not the controlled demonstrations we'd seen in the facility, but raw, primal force born from terror and love. The vampire elder screamed as deep dark energy tore through his essence, unmaking him at the molecular level. "She's protecting me," I realized with a mixture of pride and terror. My 8-year-old daughter just killed an elder vampire to keep me safe. The remaining attackers hesitated, finally understanding that they were facing something beyond their experience. A child who could unmake elder rank vampires was not the helpless asset they'd expected to recover. I used their moment of uncertainty to devastating effect. Gravity manipulation tore 2 more vampires apart, while Reika's poisoned blades found the heart of another. In less than 5 minutes, the entire pursuit team was dead. "Are you hurt?" I asked Luna immediately, checking her for injuries. "I'm okay, Daddy," she said, though her voice shook with residual adrenaline. I couldn't let them hurt you. My brave girl." I pulled her into a fierce hug, marveling at her courage even as I worried about what using that much power had cost her. "We need to move," Reika warned, scanning for additional threats. "This was just the first wave. They'll send more when this team doesn't report in." I nodded, lifting Luna into my arms. She was exhausted from the power expenditure and the trauma of combat, her small body trembling with fatigue. "Where can we go?" Luna asked weakly. "If this is their territory." Good question. We were deep in Red Chalice lands, surrounded by enemies and cut off from any friendly support. Our extraction point was thousands of kilometers away, and every moment we remained here increased the chance of recapture. "Find shelter first," Luna the Qilin advised. "Somewhere defensible where you can rest and plan your next move." Reika consulted her tactical map, marking safe zones and potential hiding spots. "There's an abandoned house about 10 kilometers northeast." "Abandoned by who?" I asked suspiciously. "Peng family. They evacuated when the Red Chalice took this region during the war." Reika's expression was grim. "The building should still be structurally sound." "It's our best option," I decided. "Let's move." The journey to the house was tense and exhausting. Luna dozed fitfully in my arms, her small body warm against my chest as we navigated through hostile territory. Every shadow could hide enemies. Every sound might herald another attack. "She trusts me to keep her safe," I thought as Luna murmured something in her sleep. "Even after everything that's happened, she still believes I can protect her." The house appeared through the morning mist like something from a Gothic nightmare. Tall spires twisted toward storm clouds, while gargoyles perched on buttresses watched our approach with stone eyes. The building was intact but clearly abandoned. Windows dark, gates hanging open, and an aura of melancholy that spoke of dreams destroyed. I carried Luna through the massive doors into a sanctuary that had once housed hundreds of members of the Peng family. "Daddy!" Luna stirred in my arms, looking around with curiosity rather than fear. "Is this where we're going to live now?" "Just for tonight, sweetheart," I assured her, "while we figure out how to get home." Home. The word carried new meaning now that Luna was part of our family. Home wasn't just where I lived. It was where my daughter would be safe and loved. Reika found a small chamber off the main sanctuary that had probably served as living quarters for the leadership. The room contained basic furniture including beds, and more importantly, it had only one entrance that we could easily defend. "Get some rest," Reika said as I set Luna down on one of the beds. "I'll take first watch." But Luna shook her head, gripping my hand tightly. "Don't leave me alone, Daddy. Please." The fear in her voice was unmistakable. After everything she'd been through, the teleportation, the vampire attack, finding herself in hostile territory, she needed the security of knowing I was close. "I'm not going anywhere," I promised, settling beside her on the narrow bed. "Try to get some sleep. We'll figure everything out tomorrow." As Luna curled up against my side, her breathing gradually evening out into the rhythm of sleep, I reflected on how completely my life had changed. Just weeks ago, I'd been focused on strategic objectives and long-term planning. Now my entire world had narrowed to protecting one small girl who called me Daddy. Is this what being a father really means? I wondered as Luna mumbled something unintelligible in her sleep. Having someone who depends on you so completely that their safety becomes more important than your own life? Yes, Luna the Qilin replied simply. That's exactly what it means. And you're already better at it than you think. Outside the walls, I could sense movement. More red chalice forces gathering, preparing for a more coordinated assault. But for now, in this moment, Luna was safe and warm beside me. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, and probably a fight for our lives. But tonight, my daughter was sleeping peacefully in her father's arms. And that was enough. Chapter 677. Escape. 2. I wake up slowly, like floating up from the bottom of a warm pool. For a moment, I forget where I am, and panic tries to grab me with cold fingers. Then I feel the steady rise and fall of breathing beneath my cheek. Smell the familiar scent that means safety and love, and remember. Daddy. The word makes me smile even before I open my eyes. I'm with Daddy, so everything is okay. I'm curled up against Arthur's side, my head on his chest where I can hear his heartbeat. His arm is wrapped around me, holding me close even in sleep, like he's protecting me from bad dreams. This is the first time I've ever slept next to another person, and it's the most wonderful feeling in the world. Is this what having a real family feels like? I wonder, snuggling closer to Daddy's warmth. Always having someone who wants to keep you safe? Through the window, I can see that it's still dark outside, but not the scary dark of the facility. This is natural darkness, with actual stars twinkling like the pictures in my books. Real stars that Daddy said I could look at whenever I wanted. We really escaped, I think with amazement. We're really free. The vampires who chased us were terrifying. All fangs and red eyes and threatening voices. But Daddy and Mama Cordelia fought them off like the heroes in the stories Daddy reads to me. And when that scary one tried to hurt Daddy, something inside me just exploded. I remember the feeling of power rushing through me, different from the controlled demonstrations in the lab. This wasn't the doctors making me use my abilities for their tests. This was me choosing to protect someone I love, and the power felt warm instead of cold, right instead of wrong. I saved Daddy, I realized with pride. When he was in danger, I was strong enough to help him. Daddy shifts in his sleep, and his arm tightens around me protectively. Even unconscious, he's making sure I'm safe. The gesture makes my chest feel full of bubbles, like happiness is fizzing through my blood. This is what I always wanted. I think, remembering all the nights I spent alone in my cold room at the facility. Someone to hold me when I'm scared. Someone who loves me just because I'm me. Before Daddy came to visit me, I didn't even know what love felt like. The doctors talked about emotional responses and attachment behaviors, but they used such cold words for something that feels like sunshine inside your heart. Daddy never uses cold words when he talks about feelings. I remember. He says love is when caring about someone makes you happy. He says family is when people choose each other. And we did choose each other, didn't we? Daddy chose to save me even though it was dangerous. I chose to call him Daddy even though I was scared he might say no. Mama Cordelia chose to help us even though she could have stayed safe. We're a real family now, I think happily. Not because someone made us be together, but because we want to be together. I think about my old room at the facility, with its white walls and medical equipment and the constant humming of the implants in my head. That humming is gone now. Daddy made it stop, gave me my own mind back. I'll never have to go back to that place, never have to be subject zero again. I wonder if the other subjects dreamed about having families too. I think sadly. The ones who didn't make it. Daddy told me there were others before me, children who didn't survive the enhancements. Sometimes I have dreams about them. Shadowy figures who look sad and lost. I wonder if they would have wanted daddies and mamas too, if they would have drawn pictures of houses with gardens. I'm the lucky one, I realize. I'm the one who got to live, who got to find a family. Maybe that means I have to be extra good, to make up for the ones who didn't get the chance.
Luna?
Daddy's voice is soft and sleepy. Are you awake, sweetheart? Yes, Daddy, I whisper back, not wanting to wake Mama Cordelia who's sleeping in the chair by the door. Did I wake you up?
I'm sorry.
Don't apologize, he says gently, his hand stroking my hair. You didn't do anything wrong. How are you feeling? How am I feeling? It's a question the doctors used to ask. But when Daddy asks it, he really wants to know. He's not looking for specific answers or testing my responses. He just cares about how I feel. Safe, I say after thinking about it, and happy, and a little scared about what happens next. But mostly happy because I'm with you and Mama Cordelia. Daddy's arms squeeze me a little tighter. I'm happy I'm with you too, sweetheart. Happier than I ever thought possible. Daddy, I ask quietly, when we get to our real house, the one I drew plans for, will you still want to sleep close to me sometimes? When I have bad dreams or get scared? Of course, he says immediately. Whenever you need me, for as long as you want. That's what daddies are for. That's what daddies are for. The words make me feel warm all over. I have a daddy who will chase away bad dreams and hold me when I'm scared and read me stories about gardens and butterflies. Will you tell me about the other people in our family? Ask. The ones you said love you? Will they love me too? Daddy is quiet for a moment, and I wonder if I ask something wrong. But then he starts talking in his soft bedtime voice, the one that makes me feel sleepy and safe. There's Rachel, who's very smart and kind. She'll probably want to teach you about magic and show you how to make pretty things with light. And Cecilia, who's strong and brave. She'll make sure no one ever hurts you. Serafina has the most beautiful singing voice, and she'll sing you lullabies when you can't sleep. So many people who might love me, I think with wonder. A whole family waiting to meet me. Will they really want me? I ask because I have to know. Even though I'm not normal? Even though I have strange powers and I was made in a lab? Luna, Daddy says seriously, they're going to love you because you're mine. Because you're part of our family now. And once they get to know you, your kindness, your curiosity, your beautiful heart, they'll love you for who you are, just like I do. Tears prick my eyes, but they're happy tears. I love you so much, Daddy. More than butterflies, more than gardens, more than anything in the whole world. I love you too, my brave, wonderful daughter, more than you could ever imagine. We lie quietly together, listening to each other breathe and feeling safe in our little sanctuary. Through the window, the stars are starting to fade as morning approaches, but I don't want this moment to end. This is the most perfect moment of my whole life, I think drowsily. Right here, right now, being loved by my daddy. Daddy, I murmur as sleep starts to pull me back down. Promise me we'll always be together, no matter what happens. I promise, sweetheart. Daddy whispers, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. Always and forever. You're stuck with me now. Always and forever. I repeat in my mind as I drift back to sleep. Daddy and Luna. Forever and always. I dream about our house with the garden, where butterflies dance in the sunlight and Daddy reads me stories, while Mama Cordelia helps me draw pictures. In my dream, there are other people there too. The family Daddy told me about, all of them smiling and welcoming me home. Home. I think in my dream, I finally know what home means. It's not a place. It's people who love you. And as I sleep safe in my daddy's arms, surrounded by love I never thought I could have, I know that no matter what happens next, I've already had the most important thing in the world. I've had a family who chose me. Chapter 678. Escape 3. I woke to the sound of Rekha's sharp intake of breath and the unmistakable sensation of overwhelming magical presence pressing against our sanctuary. The monastery's weakened wards were straining against forces far beyond what they were designed to contain. Company, Luna announced grimly in my mind. Cardinal approaching. This one's dangerous, Arthur, high immortal rank. And he's brought backup. Luna stirred against my side, her peaceful sleep shattered by the oppressive aura that filled the air. Her dark eyes opened wide with instinctive fear as she sensed the malevolent power closing in. "Daddy?" she whispered. "Something's wrong." "Stay close to me," I murmured, carefully extracting myself from the bed while keeping Luna within arm's reach. "Reika, what are we looking at?" "Cardinal Akasha himself," Reika replied tightly, her weapons already in hand, plus a full retinue, at least 24 vampires of various ranks. "He's not taking any chances." Cardinal Akasha, the monster who had overseen Luna's creation and suffering, now come personally to reclaim his lost asset. The magical pressure radiating from him was immense, high immortal rank power that made the destroyed pursuit teams seem like children. The temperature in the room dropped noticeably as that vast presence pressed against us. Ancient stone cracked under the strain, and stained glass windows began to sing with harmonic resonance. "Subject Zero," a voice called from outside, magically amplified to penetrate walls and wards alike. The words carried authority accumulated over centuries and absolute confidence in their speaker's superiority. "I know you can hear me. Come out now, and I will grant you the mercy of a quick death." Luna flinched at the clinical designation, instinctively moving closer to me for protection. The casual mention of her death, not recapture, not reconditioning but execution, confirmed what I'd suspected. They'd written her off as irretrievably compromised. "You're not Subject Zero," I told her firmly, my hands already beginning to glow with power. "You're Luna. You're my daughter. And no one is going to hurt you. Can you handle him?" Luna asked in my mind, concern evident in her mental voice. "I don't know," I admitted honestly. "High immortal rank is serious business. But I'll die before I let him touch her." "The wards are failing," Reika reported as hairline fractures spread across the walls. "Maybe 2 minutes before complete collapse." I could feel it too, the ancient protections crumbling under assault from power that belonged to a different age entirely. When those wards fell, we'd be facing Cardinal Akasha and his entire force with nowhere to run. Luna looked between us with 2 knowing eyes, reading the tension we were trying to hide. "Are we going to die?" she asked quietly. The simple, direct question from my 8-year-old daughter cut deeper than any blade. She wasn't panicking. She was just asking for truth, trusting me to give her an honest answer even in our darkest moment. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I promise you this. I will fight with everything I have to keep you safe. And if something happens to me, I need you to remember who you really are." Luna nodded solemnly, giving me her complete attention. "You are Luna Nightingale, my daughter. My brave and wonderful girl who likes butterflies and draws pictures and deserves to be loved. You are not a weapon or a tool or anything they tried to make you believe." I knelt to her level, taking her small hands in mine. "Whatever happens here, that truth never changes." "I'll remember, Daddy," she promised. "I love you. I love you too, sweetheart. More than all the stars in the sky." The monastery's outer wards collapsed with a sound like reality tearing. Immediately, the building filled with vampiric presence, so intense it felt like drowning in malevolence. Footsteps echoed in the sanctuary, measured, unhurried, confident. "Arthur Nightingale," a cultured voice called out, and my blood chilled at the casual use of my true name. Or should I say, Cardinal Matthias? "Your deception was adequate for fooling subordinates." "He knows who I am," I realized. "He's known all along." The vampiric contract with our dear Pope was quite illuminating. Akasha continued conversationally. "Alisara shared many interesting details about her obsession with you during her recent visits." Alisara. The knowledge that she was connected to this made my hands clench with fury. "But we're not here to discuss your romantic complications," Akasha said dismissively. "We're here to correct a critical error. Subject Zero has exceeded acceptable parameters and must be eliminated." "Her name is Luna," I called back. "And you're not laying a finger on my daughter." "Daughter?" Akasha's laugh was like grinding stone. "How delightfully sentimental. I suppose that's what happens when amateurs attempt espionage work. The door exploded inward, disintegrating under magical force that left the frame twisted and smoking. Cardinal Akasha stepped through the wreckage, and I got my first clear look at the monster who had tortured Luna for 8 years. He appeared to be middle-aged, with sharp features and silver hair that spoke of centuries rather than decades. But it was his eyes that marked him as truly inhuman, ancient, calculating, and completely devoid of mercy or warmth. Subject 0, he said, focusing on Luna with clinical interest. You've grown. A pity that growth was entirely in useless directions. Luna pressed against my side, trembling with terror. But when she spoke, her voice held surprising strength. My name is Luna Nightingale, she said firmly, and this is my daddy. Akasha's expression didn't change. Nightingale? Adopting your captor's name already? How efficiently you've transferred your loyalty programming. He's trying to undermine her confidence, I realized. Make her doubt our relationship before he kills her. It doesn't matter what you say, Luna replied with startling conviction. Daddy loves me, and I love him. We're family. For the first time, something flickered in Akasha's ancient eyes, perhaps annoyance at her defiance. Family. How quaint. Tell me, child, do you know what your father originally planned to do with you? No, I thought desperately, but Akasha continued. He came here to steal you, yes, but not to save you. He intended to use your power for his own purposes, to turn you into his personal weapon against other threats. Luna's hand found mine, squeezing tightly. I know, she said simply, but people can change their minds. Daddy chose to love me instead. My brave girl, I thought with fierce pride. Even facing death, she defends our bond. Akasha's patience finally ran out. Enough sentiment. You've served your purpose as an object lesson in the dangers of emotional attachment. Now you die. He raised his hand, and I felt immense power gathering mid-immortal rank force focused with surgical precision. Not just enough to kill Luna, but to unmake her completely, ensuring nothing remained. No, I thought with absolute clarity. Not my daughter. Never my daughter. I threw myself between them, knowing I might not be fast enough, might not be strong enough. And I took out a scroll from my spatial ring. Mortis Lucida. Chapter 679. Akashic Records. 1. Mortis Lucida. The world shattered like glass around me. One moment I was facing Cardinal Akasha, my daughter's life hanging in the balance, my heart burning with desperate fury. The next, reality simply ceased. Not darkness, not light, but something beyond the concept of either. I felt myself dissolving, my consciousness expanding beyond the confines of flesh and bone into something vast and incomprehensible. Mortis Lucida, I realized with crystalline clarity. Enlightenment through death of the self. The sensation was indescribable, like being torn apart and rebuilt simultaneously, every atom of my being unraveled and rewoven into patterns that mortal minds weren't meant to perceive. I was dying and being reborn in the same instant, my limited human perspective burning away to reveal truths that existed beyond the veil of ordinary reality. And then, suddenly, I was standing. The library stretched before me in directions that shouldn't exist, its impossibility making my newly expanded consciousness real. Shelves rose into infinity above and plunged into infinite depths below, their surfaces lined with books, scrolls, tablets, and forms of recorded knowledge that had no names in any mortal language. The architecture defied every law of physics I'd ever known. Staircases that led sideways into spaces that folded back on themselves, reading alcoves that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, corridors that stretched through time as well as space. No, I corrected myself as understanding flooded through me. The word library doesn't do justice to this place. This was the Akashic Records, the cosmic repository of all knowledge, all experience, all truth that had ever existed or ever would exist. Every thought ever conceived, every discovery ever made, every secret ever hidden. All of it was here, catalogued in forms that transcended mortal comprehension. The scale was overwhelming. I could sense the presence of infinite information pressing against my consciousness from every direction. Books containing the complete histories of civilizations that had risen and fallen before Earth's sun had even ignited. Scrolls documenting magical theories that could reshape the fundamental forces of reality. Tablets inscribed with the true names of entities whose very existence was classified beyond mortal security clearance. And somehow, impossibly, I could understand it all. The enlightenment of Mortis Lucida had expanded my perception beyond human limitations, allowing me to comprehend concepts that would have driven my mortal mind to madness. I was no longer bound by the constraints of linear thinking or three-dimensional space. I existed simultaneously across multiple layers of reality, my consciousness operating on frequencies that touched the very foundation of existence itself. "Welcome," a voice said, and I turned to see her approaching. If the library was beyond description, then she was beyond imagination. Her beauty wasn't merely physical, it was conceptual, existing on levels that bypassed the eyes entirely and struck directly at the soul. Golden hair that seemed woven from captured starlight cascaded over shoulders that carried the weight of infinite responsibility. Her skin held the luminescence of newborn galaxies, while her features possessed a perfection that spoke of divine artistry rather than natural evolution. But it was her eyes that truly marked her as something beyond mortal comprehension. Silver depths that contained the reflection of every possible future, every branching timeline, every choice that had ever been or could ever be made. Looking into those eyes was like staring into the heart of eternity itself. God Akasha, I realized, and the knowledge hit me like a physical blow. The librarian of the Akashic records, the keeper of all knowledge in existence. Her presence was overwhelming in ways that had nothing to do with physical intimidation. She radiated power that made Cardinal Akasha seem like a flickering candle before the fury of a star. This was a being who existed on the same level as the fundamental forces of reality: gravity, entropy, causality. She wasn't just powerful. She was power itself, given form and consciousness. And yet somehow she felt approachable, curious, as if the infinite weight of cosmic responsibility hadn't crushed the essential spark of personality that made her unique among the divine. "Arthur Nightingale," she said, and hearing my name spoken in that voice sent shivers through dimensions I hadn't known existed. "What is it that you think you need?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implications I was only beginning to understand. This wasn't a casual inquiry, it was an examination, a test of my worthiness to stand in this place and make demands of forces beyond mortal comprehension. I considered lying, offering some noble justification for my presence here. I could have asked for power to save Luna, wisdom to defeat my enemies, knowledge to protect those I loved. All of those would have been true in their way. But as I stood in the presence of absolute truth, surrounded by the sum total of all knowledge that had ever existed, dishonesty felt not just wrong but impossible. "I need a way to break out," I said honestly, the words emerging from depths of frustration I'd been carrying for longer than I cared to admit. "I'm tired of being a pawn in other people's games." Akasha's silver eyes widened slightly, the first crack in her divine composure. "Elaborate." The floodgates opened, and suppressed resentment poured out. The original Arthur Nightingale, whose memories and experiences shaped my early development. Isolde, who orchestrated my reincarnation for purposes I'm only beginning to understand. Alisara, who's been manipulating events from the shadows. And who knows who else? My voice rose with building intensity. I'm tired of discovering that every choice I've made was predicted, that every victory was allowed, that every relationship has been influenced by forces beyond my knowledge. I want to be free of their manipulations. I want to make decisions that are genuinely mine, not the inevitable result of someone else's planning. I looked directly into those impossible silver eyes. I want to break through the scripts and schemes and 10-dimensional chess games. I want to be Arthur Nightingale by choice, not by design. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the subtle whisper of infinite knowledge organizing itself in the vast spaces around us. Akasha studied me with an intensity that felt like being examined by the concept of analysis itself. Then, slowly, her lips curved into a smile that contained galaxies. Then, she began, but the word cut off abruptly. Something was materializing in the space between us, coalescing from the raw stuff of possibility into concrete reality. A book, appearing from nothingness with the solid weight of absolute truth. It was utterly ordinary at first glance. A simple tome with a gray cover, unmarked by title or symbol. The kind of plain, unremarkable volume you might find in any mortal library. Its thickness suggested substantial content, but nothing about its appearance hinted at extraordinary significance. Except for the way Akasha was staring at it. The god of knowledge, the being who had catalogued every secret in existence. She was looking at this simple gray book with an expression of pure, unadulterated shock. Her silver eyes had changed, I realized with growing amazement. The steady metallic gleam was gone, replaced by an iridescent cascade of colors that shifted and swirled like oil on water. Every hue in existence seemed to dance through those divine pupils, as if she were seeing something that challenged her fundamental understanding of reality. "Impossible," she whispered, one hand rising to cover her mouth in a gesture that seemed almost childlike in its wonder. "In all the eons I've maintained these records, in all the infinite knowledge I've catalogued, I've never seen anything like this." I reached out tentatively, my fingers hovering just above the gray cover. "What is it?" "I don't know," Akasha admitted, and the words carried the weight of a cosmic revelation. "And I know everything." The moment my fingertips made contact with the book's surface, the universe exploded into my consciousness. Knowledge flooded through me in torrents that defied description. Not information, not data, not even wisdom in any sense I'd previously understood. This was pure comprehension that bypassed rational thought entirely. The information carved itself into my expanded consciousness with surgical precision, creating new neural pathways that operated on principles beyond mortal neurology. And through it all, I could sense Akasha watching me with barely contained excitement. "You received something that transcends even my authority," she whispered, moving closer with steps that made the infinite library tremble. "Something that exists outside the scope of the Akashic records themselves." She was close enough now that I could feel the warmth radiating from her divine form, could see the countless colors still swirling through her transformed eyes. When she reached out to touch my forehead with her own, the contact sent electricity through dimensions I was still discovering. "I need to give you something," she said, her voice carrying undertones of wonder and gratitude. "A gift, because you've shown me something I never thought possible, knowledge that I don't possess." Our eyes met, and I found myself falling into those iridescent depths. The colors were hypnotic, beautiful beyond description, each hue carrying its own fragment of cosmic understanding. I felt like I was being drawn into the heart of mystery itself. And then, without warning, she kissed me. The contact was electric, divine, transformative. Power flowed between us. Not raw magical energy, but something far more subtle and profound. Understanding, perspective, a gift of clarity that would help me navigate the impossible knowledge I'd just received. When she pulled back, her breath was warm against my ear as she whispered, "This will help you process what you've learned. The knowledge you've gained is beyond mortal comprehension, but my gift will allow you to access it without losing yourself." The library around us began to dissolve, reality reasserting itself as my enlightened consciousness prepared to return to the mortal realm. Books faded into mist, shelves crumbled into starlight, and the infinite architecture of knowledge collapsed back into the realm of possibility. "Now it's time for you to go," Akasha said, raising her hand in farewell. The colors in her eyes were beginning to settle back to their original silver, but traces of the impossible rainbow still lingered. "You have work to do, Arthur Nightingale. Real work, for the first time in your existence." As the last traces of the Akashic records faded around me, I saw her bow deeply, a gesture of respect from a god to a mortal that should have been impossible. "Until we meet again," she said, her voice already growing distant. "HEWHOBREAKSFATE. The final words were something my mind couldn't quite process, a title or designation that existed in languages that predated human consciousness. But I felt their weight, their significance, their promise of things to come. Chapter 680. Akashic Records. 2. Arthur returned back to Earth. In an instant, his mana rank increased as he broke through. High Ascendant rank. But there was something else. Something more. What is this? Luna whispered in his mind, awe and terror warring in her mental voice. Arthur, what did you learn? Arthur smiled, feeling a peace he'd never experienced before settle over his shoulders as Cardinal Akasha's attack hung frozen in the air. I get it now, Luna, he murmured, his voice carrying harmonics that made reality itself pause to listen. I understand it all. Everything. The original Arthur Nightingale's consciousness stirred in the depths of his mind, sensing the dramatic shift in power dynamics. This isn't how the scenario was supposed to unfold, the artificial personality muttered with growing concern. Your plan failed, Arthur replied into the mental space they shared, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. You wanted to use Luna to inflict pain on me, to forge me into a weapon through suffering. You thought losing her would break me, remake me into something harder, colder, something more like you. The silence that followed was deafening. But you miscalculated, Arthur continued, savoring the moment. You gave me access to power you never imagined. Power that exists beyond your understanding, beyond your schemes, beyond your ability to control or predict. In the physical world, Arthur raised his hands with deliberate calm. In his right palm, light gathered, not simple radiance, but the fundamental force of creation itself. In his left, darkness coalesced, not mere shadow, but the primal essence of entropy and dissolution. Cardinal Akasha's expression shifted from predatory confidence to confusion, then to the first stirrings of genuine concern as he witnessed what Arthur was preparing to do. He's not just wielding opposing elements, he realized with growing horror. He's planning to merge them. But that's suicide. Pure light and deep dark are irreconcilable forces. The moment they touch, they'll annihilate each other and take him with them. Behind Akasha, his retinue of vampires and cultists pressed forward, their eyes gleaming with bloodlust as they prepared to overwhelm Arthur's position through sheer numbers. Arthur clapped his hands together. The collision that should have resulted in mutual annihilation instead birthed something entirely new. Something that had never existed before in any reality, any timeline, any possibility. Gray. Not the absence of color, but the presence of something beyond color. Not a mixture of light and darkness, but their transcendence into a state that existed outside the normal spectrum of existence. Cardinal Akasha's hand shot up instinctively, fingers tracing desperate runes as he activated what Arthur recognized as an ancient-grade artifact. A treasure capable of piercing through any illusion, analyzing any form of energy, comprehending any type of magic. The artifact's analytical matrix touched the gray and immediately shattered. Arthur watched with clinical interest as Akasha stumbled backward, blood trickling from his eyes as his own detection spell rebounded catastrophically. The Cardinal's mind was trying to process something that existed outside the boundaries of processable information, and the cognitive dissonance was literally tearing apart his neural pathways. This isn't mana, Akasha thought desperately, his consciousness struggling to categorize what he was witnessing. This isn't miasma. This isn't energy at all. What in the name of every god and devil is this? It's gray, Arthur said aloud, his voice carrying across dimensions as the power settled around him like a second skin. The force that exists in the spaces between all other forces. The power that doesn't break laws because it exists outside the concept of laws entirely. The gray wasn't hot or cold, bright or dark, heavy or light. It simply was, in a way that made all other forms of existence seem like pale imitations of true reality. Daddy, Luna whispered from behind him, her small voice filled with wonder rather than fear. You feel different, stronger. I'm still me, sweetheart, Arthur replied gently, though his eyes never left the assembled threats. I'm just finally strong enough to protect you properly. Cardinal Akasha snarled and gestured sharply to his forces. Kill them all. The girl, the woman, the man. Leave nothing alive. The vampires surged forward as one, their forms blurring with supernatural speed. Bishops channeled blood magic while vampires attacked with claws that could rend steel. The first wave of attackers, 3 bishops whose combined might could level city blocks, reached the gray surrounding Arthur and simply ceased. Not killed, not destroyed. They stopped existing, their forms unraveling from reality as if they had never been born. The space they had occupied didn't even remember they had been there. Impossible! Akasha breathed, his voice cracking with strain. Those were ascendant-rank combatants. They cannot simply— How weak! Arthur interrupted, genuinely disappointed. A group of cultists tried to flank around toward Luna and Reika, thinking they could force Arthur to choose between offense and defense. Arthur turned his gray eyes toward them. Where Azure had once resided, now existed something that wasn't quite color, wasn't quite light, wasn't quite anything that had words to describe it. The cultists looked into those eyes and simply weren't anymore. They vanished mid-stride, their existence edited from the timeline so cleanly that their weapons clattered to the ground as if dropped by ghosts. More vampires arrived through the breached walls, vampire elders who had served the Red Chalice for centuries, their bodies enhanced beyond mortal limitations. They channeled blood magic accumulated over lifetimes of slaughter, spells that could reshape continents and curses that could twist the laws of nature itself. All of it met the gray and was quietly, efficiently unmade. Arthur walked through the chaos like a force of nature, each step leaving empty space where enemies had been moments before. Not corpses, not destruction. Just clean, peaceful nothingness where threats to his family had once existed. The gray responded to his protective instincts before he could even form conscious thoughts, flowing outward to encompass Luna and Reika in a barrier that existed outside the concept of barriers. Any attack that approached this protection didn't bounce off or get absorbed. It simply edited itself out of reality rather than risk existing in the same space as something so fundamentally beyond normal physics. Within minutes, the house fell silent except for the sound of settling debris and Cardinal Akasha's ragged breathing. Arthur stood alone among empty spaces where dozens of enemies had been, the gray settling around him like a benediction. Behind him, Luna stirred with wonder, while Reika stared in amazement at the impossible display of power. Cardinal Akasha was the only enemy left, his face twisted with panic as he stared at the empty spaces where his forces had been. "You thought you could hurt my daughter?" Arthur asked, his voice carrying infinite patience and absolute finality. The moment their eyes met, Arthur saw Akasha's sanity begin to fracture. The Cardinal was looking through him now, seeing not just his physical form but the mathematical structures that defined his existence, the conceptual frameworks that gave him meaning, the abstract relationships that connected him to the rest of reality. And beyond all of that, he was glimpsing the gray itself, the force that existed in the spaces between thoughts, in the pauses between heartbeats, in the eternal moment between cause and effect. Run! Every survival instinct in Akasha's body screamed simultaneously. Run! Without another word, Cardinal Akasha tore open a blood-rift portal, hurling himself through dimensional space with the desperation of a man fleeing the end of the world itself. The portal sealed behind him, leaving only the lingering scent of copper and terror. Arthur looked back at Luna, who was staring at him with wide, dark eyes filled with wonder rather than fear. "Daddy," she said softly, "you saved us." "Always, sweetheart," Arthur replied, kneeling down to gather her into his arms. "I will always save you. She's safe," he realized with profound relief. For the first time since we've known each other, she's actually safe. But Cardinal Akasha was still out there, still a threat to his family. And now that Arthur understood the true scope of his capabilities, he couldn't simply let him escape to potentially harm Luna again in the future. "Reika," he said quietly, "watch Luna for just a moment." Space folded around Arthur like origami in the hands of a patient artist. Not a portal, not teleportation, not any conventional method of transportation. He simply existed elsewhere, in the place where Cardinal Akasha thought he'd found safety. The Red Chalice outpost materialized around him, Dark stone corridors, blood-red banners, and the acrid smell of supernatural corruption. Dozens of cultists filled the hallways, their conversations cutting off abruptly as they sensed something unprecedented entering their sanctum. Cardinal Akasha stood in the center of the main chamber, his face twisted with panic as he barked orders at subordinates who couldn't comprehend the magnitude of what they were facing. "Reinforce the wards," he commanded desperately. "Activate every defense. Contact the other cardinals. Send word to—" "You thought you could run?" Arthur asked, his voice cutting through the desperate planning like a blade through silk. Every ward in the facility, every protective enchantment, every barrier that had been painstakingly constructed over decades of careful preparation. All of it simply stepped aside, recognizing something that operated on principles so far beyond their understanding that resistance was meaningless. Cardinal Akasha turned to face him, and Arthur watched the last vestiges of the Cardinal's sanity crumble as he truly comprehended what Arthur had become. "Please," Akasha whispered, his voice breaking. "I was following orders. The asset needed to be—" "Her name," Arthur said with infinite patience, "is Luna Nightingale. She is my daughter. And you thought you could hurt her." Arthur raised his hand, not bothering with incantations or magical gestures. The gray flowed outward from his palm like liquid starlight, touching everything in the chamber with gentle, inexorable force. The cultists, the walls, the stones soaked in centuries of blood magic, the very air itself. All of it encountered the gray and quietly ceased to exist. Not destroyed in fire or shattered by force, but simply edited out of reality as if it had never been there to begin with. Cardinal Akasha had just enough time for one final realization before the gray reached him. This isn't power, he understood with crystal clarity. This isn't magic. This is something that exists beyond the concept of gods. Then he was gone, along with everything else that had threatened Arthur's family. Arthur stood alone in an empty space where the outpost had been, feeling the gray settle around him like a comfortable cloak. In the distance, he could sense Luna's presence, safe, unharmed, waiting for him to return. The original Arthur's plan truly has failed, he thought with deep satisfaction. Luna is safe. I am free. And now, for the first time in either of my lives, I can choose my own path forward. He smiled and began the journey home to his family.